For thousands of years, the earth has kept its secrets buried, deep beneath stone, sand, and sea. Golden masks, forgotten tombs, artifacts that whisper of worlds long lost. Tonight, we journey into the mysteries that history still cannot explain. From vanished cities to treasures hidden in silence. These are the secrets that refuse to die. So if you're ready to drift into wonder, stay close. And don't forget to subscribe channel Catmew, because this story is only just beginning. Beneath the rolling hills of southeastern Kazakhstan, where the steppe stretches endlessly under a pale blue sky, lies a mystery older than empire itself. They call him the Golden Man of Issyk, and for over 2,000 years, his story has waited in silence for you to find it. It is not the tale of a great city, nor of a mighty temple reaching toward the heavens, but of a single man, buried in silence, wrapped in gold, hidden beneath a mound of earth, until chance revealed him to the world. He is called the Golden Man, a figure so radiant in death, that even today, he glimmers as one of archaeology's most haunting mysteries. It was the summer of 1969, when a group of workers near the town of Issyk stumbled upon an ancient burial mound. Beneath layers of earth and stone, archaeologists uncovered a wooden chamber that had lain undisturbed for centuries, and there, resting quietly in the shadows, was the body of a young warrior, no older than 18 or 20, dressed in over 4,000 golden ornaments, each one a piece of a glittering puzzle from a forgotten time. His armor was unlike anything ever seen before. Tiny plaques of hammered gold, shaped into intricate patterns of animals and mythical creatures, stitched together with such precision that the garments seemed to ripple like sunlight on water. A tall conical headdress, studded with golden deer and winged horses, crowned his head, making him look less like a man, and more like a figure who had stepped straight out of legend. Who was this youth, dressed in the wealth of a kingdom, and laid to rest as though he were a god? Some believe he was a Scythian prince, perhaps the son of a great ruler, buried in honor at a time when nomadic tribes swept across the Eurasian steppe with their horses and arrows, shaping the destiny of empires. Others think he may have been more than royalty, perhaps a warrior chosen to bridge the world of the living and the world of the spirits. For the Scythians, gold was not merely wealth. It was a sacred material, a symbol of power, eternity, and divine protection. And so this young man, whoever he was sent into the afterlife, encased in the eternal glow of gold, his body transformed into a timeless monument. The Issyk mound itself revealed more than just treasure. Alongside the Golden Man were weapons, bronze vessels, and even fragments of a silver bowl inscribed with mysterious symbols that remain undeciphered to this day. Were they words, a lost language, or perhaps a code meant only for the gods? No one can say for certain, and yet, in that silence, there lingers the sense that the young warrior carried with him, not only the ornaments of his people, but also their secrets, their wisdom, and their dreams. Imagine the funeral itself more than 2 millennia ago. A procession of warriors in furs and armor, the sound of hooves pounding the frozen ground, the air filled with the bitter smoke of burning sage. His family, his people, gathered around the great mound, watching as the youth was laid to rest, his golden headdress catching the last light of the sun. To them, he was not gone. He had simply crossed into another world, one where gold would protect him forever, one where the spirits of the steppe would guide his horse into eternity. And yet here we are today, standing at the edge of that silence, peering into a grave that still refuses to answer the deepest questions. Why was so much wealth given to someone so young? Why were his garments made with such astonishing craftsmanship, as though the greatest artisans of the age had labored only for him, and perhaps the greatest mystery of all? Why was his story hidden for so long, only to emerge in our own time, when the world is again searching for meaning in its past. The Golden Man has become more than an archaeological wonder. He has become a symbol of Kazakhstan itself, a reminder that history is not only written in books and monuments, but also in the quiet presence of a single person who carries the memory of an entire people. Statues of the Golden Man now stand in cities across the land, his tall headdress rising toward the sky, his figure watching silently over the steppe, just as he did more than 2,000 years ago. Yet for all that we see, for all that we admire, the truth of who he was remains veiled, as though he still belongs not to us, but to the earth that cradled him for so long. In the end, the Golden Man of Issyk is not simply a discovery. He is a riddle, a reminder that sometimes the past reveals just enough to stir our wonder, but withholds the rest, leaving us restless, curious, and forever searching. And perhaps that is the gift of the Golden Man, not the gold itself, not the headdress or the armor, but the silence that keeps us listening, waiting, dreaming of the secrets still buried in the steppe, the silver scrolls of Ketef Hinnom. In the limestone hills just outside the ancient walls of Jerusalem, there lies a burial cave that once seemed no different from the countless others carved into the rock of this land. Time had hidden it well, its entrance nearly lost to the earth, its silence unbroken for centuries. And yet within that quiet tomb, archaeologists uncovered something so fragile, so impossibly delicate, that it has rewritten what we know of history. They are called the Silver Scrolls of Ketef Hinnom, two tiny amulets made of rolled silver, etched with words so faint that the human eye can barely trace them. But those words, carved more than 2,600 years ago, are the oldest surviving fragments of biblical scripture ever found. It was the year 1979 when the discovery was made. A team of archaeologists, led by Gabriel Barkey, began excavating a series of rock-hewn burial chambers on the slope known as Ketef Hinnom, just southwest of Jerusalem's Old City. What they expected to find were the usual remnants of ancient burials, pottery, beads, perhaps some fragments of bone. Instead, they uncovered something no one had dared imagine. Within one chamber, amid the scattered remains of the dead, they found two small rolls of tarnished silver, no larger than a cigarette, no thicker than a fingernail. They seemed ordinary at first glance, mere ornaments or perhaps charms placed with the departed. Yet when the silver was carefully unrolled, an almost impossible task, for the metal was brittle, crumbling at the slightest touch, what emerged was nothing less than a whisper from the ancient world. On the surface of the scrolls, painstakingly etched by an unknown hand, were words in early Hebrew script, lines that would later be recognized as a version of the priestly blessing from the Book of Numbers. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Words still spoken today in Jewish prayers. Words that have echoed for centuries across synagogues, churches, and temples. But here, in these fragile silver scrolls, they appeared centuries older than any known biblical manuscript, predating even the Dead Sea Scrolls by hundreds of years. Imagine for a moment the world of the people who carved those words. The late 7th century BC, the time of the First Temple in Jerusalem. A city alive with pilgrims, with smoke rising from sacrificial fires, with priests in white garments reciting blessings to the gathered crowds, and somewhere among them, an artisan bends over a strip of silver, hammering it flat, then scratching letter by letter, slowly, carefully into the shining surface. This was no ordinary text. This was a blessing meant to protect. A prayer worn close to the body, rolled tightly, strung perhaps on a cord, and carried as a talisman. It was not only scripture, it was shield, comfort, promise. The scrolls were buried with their owners, placed beside them, as if to guard their journey into the afterlife. The people of that time believed that the divine name carried power, and to carry it into death was to carry a light into the darkness. These amulets then were more than words. They were living prayers, carried beyond the grave. The excavation of Kitef Hinnom revealed more than just the scrolls. The tombs contained the bones of men, women, and children. Laid to rest in niches carved into the walls, pottery vessels, jewelry, and other offerings surrounded them, reminders of lives once lived. Yet nothing compared to the scrolls. Their discovery was so delicate that scientists had to wait years before attempting to fully unroll them. Using advanced technology, they slowly revealed the inscriptions, letter by letter, until the ancient words shone again in the light of day. What makes these scrolls so haunting is not only their age, but their endurance. Silver, unlike papyrus or parchment, does not decay easily. For more than 2.5 millennia, these tiny amulets waited in silence, untouched, while empires rose and fell above them. Babylon came, destroying Jerusalem. Persia followed. Then Greece, then Rome. The world changed, faiths shifted, languages evolved, and yet, in the darkness of the tomb, the scrolls endured, their blessing unbroken, their prayer unforgotten. There is something almost poetic about it, that the oldest surviving words of the Bible are not written on great scrolls of parchment preserved in temples, but on 2 tiny strips of silver, hidden in a grave, carried by ordinary people who sought protection in life and in death. It reminds us that history is not always written by kings and empires, but by the quiet faith of individuals, by the small acts of devotion that outlast centuries. Today, the silver scrolls rest in a climate-controlled display at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. Visitors peer at them through glass, astonished by their size, their fragility, their power, and yet, no matter how closely one looks, the mystery remains. Who wore them? What fears or hopes pressed upon their heart when they placed these amulets around their neck? Were they a priest, a merchant, a mother, a child? Did they believe the words would heal, or protect, or simply remind them that even in the darkest times the divine presence walked beside them? Perhaps we will never know, but what we do know is this. The silver scrolls of Kitef Hinnom are not relics of a forgotten faith. They are living voices, carried across millennia, still speaking to us today. Their words are as soft as a whisper, as enduring as the stars, as steady as the stone hills in which they were hidden. They are proof that sometimes the smallest objects carry the greatest weight, and that even in death, a prayer can survive to bless the living. And so, as the shadows lengthen over Jerusalem, and the ancient stones glow with the last light of the sun, one can almost imagine those silver scrolls still whispering their blessing into the air, still shining quietly beneath the earth, still guarding secrets that time itself could not erase. The tomb of the Lady of Tao. In the desert valleys of northern Peru, where the wind moves across dunes of golden sand, and the ruins of ancient temples crumble under a blazing sun, there lies a story that remained hidden for nearly 1,700 years. It is the story of a woman whose body was wrapped and buried with treasures, whose skin was marked with intricate tattoos, and whose power was unlike any other discovered in her world. She is called the Lady of Tao, and her tomb has become one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in the Americas. The year was 2006, when Peruvian archaeologists began excavating a site known as El Brujo, the Wizard, a massive ceremonial complex built by the Moche civilization. Rising near the Pacific coast, the site had long been known for its towering adobe pyramids, decorated with murals of warriors, rituals, and gods. For centuries, the desert had preserved these walls, hiding secrets beneath the layers of sand. And it was here, beneath the Huaca Tao Viejo pyramid, that the Lady of Tao was found. Inside a chamber sealed by bricks of clay, the archaeologists uncovered a bundle of cotton and textiles. Slowly, carefully, they removed the wrappings. Layer after layer revealed golden ornaments, copper diadems, and elaborate jewelry. And then, At the heart of it all, the preserved body of a woman. She was young, perhaps in her 20s when she died, but her burial was unlike anything seen before, for she had been laid to rest with the symbols of power, weapons, crowns, and treasures that had always been thought reserved for most rulers and warriors, always men. Yet here it was a woman. Her body told its own story. Her arms, still visible after more than a millennium, were covered in tattoos. They were not simple decorations. They were intricate designs. Snakes, spiders, jaguars, and supernatural figures, inked in deep black, crawling across her skin as if alive. These symbols were sacred, representing fertility, life, death, and divine power. They suggested she was not only a ruler, but a priestess, a woman believed to command spiritual authority, to bridge the human and the divine. The tattoos of the Lady of Sal astonished the world. The Moche people had left behind countless murals and ceramics depicting rituals, but never before had archaeologists seen the living canvas of those symbols preserved on human skin. Her tattoos gave her an identity, a voice across time. They spoke of her role as a healer, a shaman, a leader who carried the weight of her people's faith. The artifacts buried with her only deepened the mystery. Spears, ceremonial clubs, and war regalia surrounded her body. A crown of copper, inlaid with turquoise, rested near her head. Her presence challenged long-held assumptions that power in Moche society was entirely male. Here was proof that women could rise to the highest positions of authority, commanding armies, leading ceremonies, and shaping the destiny of a civilization. Imagine the life she might have lived. A valley surrounded by dry mountains, where rivers carved green oases into the desert. The Moche thrived here, building temples, crafting exquisite pottery, and practicing rituals that combined blood, sacrifice, and fertility. At the center of it all stood the Lady of Tao. She may have walked across the plazas of El Brujo, the people bowing as she passed. Her skin marked with sacred tattoos, her presence a living symbol of power. She might have presided over rituals, standing before painted walls that depicted warriors and gods, raising her hands to the sky as the drums echoed across the pyramid. But death came early. Perhaps she died in childbirth, as so many young women did. Perhaps illness claimed her. Whatever the cause, her people honored her in a way reserved for the greatest of leaders. They buried her with treasures, encased her in wrappings, and sealed her tomb in the pyramid's walls, as if to keep her close to the gods. For centuries, the desert preserved her. The dry air, the sealed chamber, and the protective wrappings turned her into a time capsule of the Moche world. When her tomb was opened, her body seemed almost alive, her skin still bearing the tattoos, her hair still dark, her presence still commanding. The discovery of the Lady of Sui has transformed our understanding of ancient Peru. She was not the first woman buried with honor, but she was the first to reveal the scale of female power in Moche culture. She became a symbol of balance, the idea that authority was not bound only to men, but shared by those chosen by the gods. Today, her mummy rests in a specially designed museum near El Brujo, displayed in glass that protects her from time, yet allows visitors to look upon her face. Thousands travel to see her, to stand before her, and to feel the weight of her presence. Her tattoos, though faded, still draw the eye, still stir the imagination, and her story whispers of a civilization where women could rule as priestesses, warriors, and queens. But the Lady of Sui still keeps her secrets. Who exactly was she? How did she rise to such power? What did her people believe she could do in life and in death? Archaeologists can only guess. The murals of El Brujo show women in rituals but never name them. The pottery reveals gods and myths, but not the details of her rule. And so she remains a mystery, a voice half heard, a story half told. Yet perhaps that is her true gift, that even in silence she speaks, that even across centuries, her presence commands respect. The Lady of Sui reminds us that history is never simple, never one-sided, that beneath the sands of time lie stories waiting to be told, stories of women whose power was hidden but not forgotten. As the desert wind whispers across the ruins of El Brujo and the ocean tides crash on the nearby coast, her spirit seems to linger. A young woman covered in sacred tattoos, crowned with copper and gold, resting in the heart of a pyramid, a ruler, a priestess, a mystery that time could not erase. And so, the Lady of Sui continues her silent reign, not over the Mosh alone, but over all who stand before her tomb, all who gaze upon her face, all who hear her story. She is proof that power transcends time, that memory survives death, and that in the quiet of the desert, even a single woman can command the echo of eternity. The Archilokary Axe, in the rolling hills of Crete, where olive groves stretch into the horizon and the wind hums through valleys carved by time, lies a small cave near the village of Archilokary. To the casual eye, it looks ordinary, just another hollow in the rugged Cretan landscape. But inside, archaeologists stumbled upon a relic so mysterious, so charged with questions, that it continues to puzzle scholars and stir imaginations to this day. This is the story of the Archilokary Axe, a bronze object marked with strange signs that whisper of forgotten languages and lost rituals. The discovery came in the early 20th century, during excavations that sought to uncover the hidden layers of Crete's ancient past. The cave at Archilokary was already known as a place of ritual. Local shepherds had long spoken of unusual finds, bronze swords, daggers, votive offerings. When archaeologists entered, they uncovered more than 3,000 bronze objects, weapons, double axes, and ceremonial items, all placed carefully within the cave. Clearly, this was no mere storage site. It was a sanctuary, a sacred space where offerings to the gods had been made for centuries. But among the pile of bronze treasures, one object stood apart. It was a double axe, cast in bronze, about 30 centimeters long. Unlike the others, this axe was not plain. Across its surface, etched carefully, ran an inscription. Mysterious symbols arranged in a sequence, as if telling a story, as if carrying a message. This was the Archilokary Axe. The double axe itself already carried deep meaning. In Minoan culture, which flourished on Crete thousands of years ago, the labris or double axe was more than a weapon. It was a sacred emblem, a symbol linked to female divinities, to rituals of fertility and renewal. The labris appeared in shrines, in frescoes, in the architecture of the great palace of Knossos. It was an icon that connected people to their gods, a bridge between the human and the divine. To find one inscribed with writing was extraordinary. The symbols on the Archilokary Axe, number 15, they are not random scratches, not decorations. They resemble the signs of a script. Some look like figures, others like abstract marks. At first glance, they seem connected to Linear A, the undeciphered writing system of the Minoans, yet they do not match exactly. Some scholars believe the inscription is a variant, a local version of Linear A. Others think it may not be writing at all, but magical symbols, a coded prayer, or even a ritual charm. The mystery deepens when one compares the Archilokary Axe to the famous Phaistos disc, another artifact from Crete covered in undeciphered signs. Could the two be connected? Do they represent a lost script, a language that vanished before history began to record it? If so, then the Archilokary Axe might be a key that has yet to unlock its door. Imagine the axe in its original setting, a dark cave, lit by flickering torches. Priests or priestesses gathered before an altar, offering bronze weapons to the earth, to the gods. The double axe gleaming in the firelight, lifted high in ritual, its symbols catching the glow. Perhaps words were spoken, chants repeated, as the axe was lowered into the sacred chamber. It was never meant for battle. It was a voice, cast in bronze, speaking to powers unseen. What do the symbols say? That is the question that lingers. Without a translation, we can only guess. Perhaps it is a dedication to the goddess protector of Crete. Perhaps it is a name, the identity of the one who gave the offering. Or perhaps it is a spell, a binding of words into metal, meant to endure long after voices faded. The axe also forces us to reconsider the role of writing in Minoan society. For decades, archaeologists debated whether the Minoans were a peaceful people, devoted to art, religion, and trade. But the Archaeolocary cave was full of weapons, bronze swords, spearheads, and axes. Were these purely votive, or did they suggest a society more warlike than once believed? And if writing appeared on weapons, what does that say about the blending of ritual and power? The mystery expands further when we remember that Linear A, the supposed script of the Minoans, remains undeciphered to this day. Unlike Linear B, which was later used by the Mycenaeans and cracked in the 1950s, Linear A resists translation. It seems to record a language unrelated to any known tongue, perhaps an isolate, perhaps lost forever. The Archaeolocary axe may therefore be a fragment of a voice we can never hear fully, a sentence in a book we cannot read. And yet the power of the artifact does not lie only in its inscription. It lies in the aura it carries. To stand before it today in the Heraklion Archaeological Museum is to feel the weight of centuries. The bronze gleams softly under the lights. The symbols stare back, unyielding, silent. One cannot help but wonder who held it, who etched those marks, who offered it into the darkness of the cave. There is also the human side of the story. The Minoans were not faceless figures of myth. They were farmers, sailors, craftsmen, women and men who loved, feared, dreamed. The Archaeolocary axe reminds us that they too sought to communicate with forces larger than themselves, that they too inscribed their prayers and hopes onto objects of beauty and power. The axe is their voice across time, even if we cannot yet understand the words. As the narration drifts into silence, let us imagine the cave once more. The air heavy with smoke, the echo of chants, the glitter of bronze piled high. And there, in the center, the double axe, etched with symbols, waiting to be found again, waiting for us to read what has remained unreadable. The Archaeolocary axe is not just an artifact. It is a question carved in bronze, a reminder that even in an age of satellites and supercomputers, mysteries endure. It is a symbol of humility before the unknown and a call to listen, truly listen to the voices of the past. And so, the axe rests, silent, patient, timeless. Its symbols remain unbroken, its message unread. But in its silence lies its power, for it teaches us that not all mysteries are meant to be solved quickly. Some are meant to linger, to stir curiosity, to remind us that history is a labyrinth and we are still learning how to walk its paths. The Lycurgus Cup. In the quiet halls of the British Museum, under soft light, rests an object so rare, so strange, that it feels almost alive. To the casual visitor, it looks like a Roman glass cup, delicate, beautiful, and old. But to those who pause, who look closely, the Lycurgus cup reveals its secret. It changes before your very eyes. Hold it up to the light, and the glass glows a soft green. Shine a light through it, and suddenly it burns a deep blood red. One vessel, two faces. A transformation so mesmerizing that it has puzzled and enchanted scientists, historians, and storytellers alike for centuries. This is the Lycurgus cup, a treasure of late Roman artistry, and perhaps one of the most mysterious objects ever created in antiquity. The cup itself is not large, just over 16 centimeters tall, carefully shaped, with figures in high relief carved into its surface. But its true wonder lies not in its size, nor even in its design, but in the way it plays with light, a property we call dichroism. Imagine a material that shifts color depending on how light strikes it. Imagine glass that glows green one moment, and then with a flicker of flame or a shaft of sun, bursts into red, as though filled with liquid fire. How did Roman craftsmen, nearly 1,700 years ago, create such a thing, and what did it mean to them? The scene carved into the cup is as intriguing as the material itself. It tells the story of King Lycurgus of Thrace, a man from Greek mythology, known for his defiance of the god Dionysus. Lycurgus, consumed by anger and arrogance, raised his axe against the followers of the god of wine and ecstasy. But his defiance was short-lived. Dionysus and his retinue ensnared him in vines, trapping him in madness. The cup shows this moment of downfall, Lycurgus entangled, his limbs bound, his face contorted in rage and fear. Around him spirits, satyrs, and Dionysus himself complete the scene. It is not a tale of victory, but of warning. The Lycurgus cup was, in this sense, more than a vessel. It was a story told in glass, a reminder of hubris punished, of divine order prevailing over human pride. But when the cup is lit from behind, when its green becomes red, the tale takes on a darker, more visceral meaning. It is as though the blood of Lycurgus himself fills the cup, as if the glass drinks his fate and glows with his downfall. Scientists today know why this happens. The glass is not ordinary. It contains tiny particles of gold and silver, ground so fine that they measure less than 1,000th the width of a human hair. Suspended in the glass, these nanoparticles interact with light in strange ways, scattering it, absorbing it, transforming it. The result is the phenomenon we now call dichroism. But here is the real mystery. Roman craftsmen could not have known the science. They could not have measured particles so small, nor calculated how light would behave at such a scale, and yet they achieved it. How? Was it by accident, through generations of experimentation, or did they hold a knowledge we have lost, a craft that slipped away with time? Some say the Lycurgus cup is evidence of an ancient form of nanotechnology, a phrase that feels almost impossible, and yet the evidence glows before us. No other ancient artifact displays this effect so vividly. In fact, the Lycurgus cup is unique. Other Roman glassmakers created shimmering vessels, yes, but none with this precise interplay of color, none with this deep transformation. It is as if the knowledge existed only once, was used only here, and then was lost forever. The cup itself may have been used in banquets, perhaps held up in torchlight while wine glowed red within. Imagine a Roman aristocrat, reclining on cushions, guests gathered in hushed awe as the vessel shifted shades before their eyes. To them it must have seemed like magic, like divine power contained in an object. Perhaps it was even used in sacred rituals tied to the myth it depicts, a vessel not for mere drinking, but for storytelling, for performance, for invoking fear and reverence. The Lycurgus cup also carries another kind of story. It is a reminder of fragility. The object has survived almost 2 millennia, through wars, through collapse, through the silence of forgotten centuries. Its glass so delicate still holds its secret, and yet it could shatter in an instant. To stand before it is to feel both the weight of history and the vulnerability of time. When we look at the cup today under museum lights, we see more than just an artifact, we see a bridge. A bridge between ancient artisans and modern scientists, between myth and material, between light and shadow. We see a question that has no easy answer. How did they do it? And why has no one done it again? Some believe that the Lycurgus cup may not have been the only one of its kind, that other dichroic vessels once existed, now broken, melted, lost. If that is true, then the cup we see today is the sole survivor of a forgotten tradition, a single spark from a fire long extinguished. Others wonder if the cup was experimental, a one-time discovery, an accident never repeated. If so, it is even more precious, for it holds not only beauty, but mystery, a glimpse of knowledge that vanished as quickly as it appeared. There is something deeply human in this, for we too often stumble upon greatness by accident. We too create wonders we cannot explain, lose them and search for them again. The Lycurgus cup reminds us that history is not a steady climb, but a labyrinth of moments. Brilliance flaring, fading, waiting to be rediscovered. Close your eyes and picture it. The banquet hall glowing with firelight, the laughter of Romans, the chanting of poets, the music of lyres. A servant lifts the cup, the guests lean forward. The glass shifts from green to red, like leaves turning in autumn, like sunrise spilling over the horizon, like blood flowing through veins. A silence falls. For a moment the world holds its breath, and then, as now, the mystery remains. The Lycurgus cup is not just Roman glass. It is a poem written in light, a riddle cast in fire and metal, a memory of a time when myth and science walked hand in hand. To look upon it is to feel wonder, the kind that slows the heart, softens the breath, and makes us remember that not everything needs to be solved. Some things exist to be seen, to be held in silence, to be marveled at, and so the cup sits, quiet in its glass case, waiting, still changing, still glowing, still whispering its story, a vessel of myth, of blood, of mystery. The Lycurgus cup, forever green, forever red, forever unknown. The dead city of Akrotiri. Beneath the blazing sun of the Aegean Sea, on the island we know today as Santorini, lies a city frozen in time. A city that once bustled with voices, markets, footsteps echoing against paved streets, and walls painted with colors as vivid as the dawn. A city where merchants traded, sailors returned from voyages, and children ran through winding alleys. But then, in a moment of fire and ash, it all ended. The people vanished, the houses collapsed, and the world above forgot. For centuries, Akrotiri lay hidden, sleeping beneath layers of volcanic earth, preserved in silence, waiting to be found again. This is the story of the lost city of Akrotiri, a story of beauty, of catastrophe, and of secrets still buried beneath the sands of time. The tale begins more than 3,500 years ago, in the Bronze Age. The island we now call Santorini was then known as Thera, a jewel of the Aegean. Its people were sailors, traders, and artists. They built their city with elegance, with stone houses that rose several stories high, with paved streets and drainage systems more advanced than many cities of Europe would have for another 2 millennia. The frescoes on their walls show ships gliding over blue seas, dolphins leaping in painted waves, girls gathering saffron flowers, priests in flowing robes offering to the gods. Akrotiri was not just a settlement, it was a masterpiece of human living. But beauty, as history reminds us, is fragile. Sometime around the middle of the 17th century BC, the ground trembled, the island shook, the sky darkened. The volcano at the heart of Thera erupted with a force so vast that its echo was felt across the ancient world. The eruption was one of the most violent ever recorded in human history. Entire portions of the island collapsed into the sea. Ash rained down, waves surged outward in great tsunamis, and the city of Akrotiri was buried beneath volcanic debris, preserved in a strange kind of death. Unlike Pompeii, no bodies were found in Akrotiri. The people, it seems, had time to flee. Perhaps they felt the earth's warnings, the smaller quakes before the great one. Perhaps they sailed away in their ships, leaving behind their painted walls, their pots, their tools, their beds still unmade. What remains is a ghost city, empty, silent, yet hauntingly alive in detail. Walking through Akrotiri today is like stepping into a dream. The buildings still stand, their staircases leading nowhere, their rooms frozen in midlife. On the walls, the frescoes glow as if freshly painted. Swallows dart across skies, lilies bloom in crimson, fishermen return with their catch. It is as if the artists finished their work only yesterday, and yet, the people are gone, their voices lost, their fate unknown. Did they survive? Did they settle elsewhere? Or were they swallowed by the sea, their ships overtaken by waves in the chaos that followed? Some scholars believe Akrotiri was more than just a city. They see in its advanced systems, its art, and its sudden disappearance, the seed of a much larger legend, the story of Atlantis. Plato, writing centuries later, spoke of a mighty civilization that vanished in a single day, a night of misfortune. Could it be that Akrotiri, with its flourishing culture and its destruction by fire and sea, gave birth to this tale? Perhaps Atlantis is not a myth at all, but a memory of Thera, retold across generations until fact and story blurred. The frescoes of Akrotiri speak in whispers. Look closely and you see not only beauty, but knowledge. In one room, a great procession of ships sails across painted waves, suggesting not just local fishing, but vast networks of trade, perhaps reaching as far as Egypt and the Near East. In another, women gather saffron, an herb used for medicine, hinting at a society that valued healing and ritual. The colors are striking: reds, yellows, blues, pigments drawn from minerals, plants, and the sea itself. Through them we glimpse a people who loved life, who celebrated the natural world, who lived close to both land and ocean. And yet, what haunts the ruins most is the silence. Streets that once rang with life now echo only with the footsteps of visitors. Windows once filled with light now stare like hollow eyes. The city, though empty, feels inhabited, not by ghosts, but by memory itself. Archaeologists have uncovered only part of Akrotiri. Much of it remains buried, sealed beneath volcanic stone. What treasures lie hidden there? What frescoes yet to be revealed? What artifacts still waiting to see the sun again? No one knows. Each excavation peels back a layer of the past, yet the city keeps its heart concealed. Perhaps beneath the ruins lies a palace, perhaps a temple, perhaps answers to questions we have not yet learned to ask. But maybe, just maybe, the silence is deliberate. Maybe Akrotiri holds its secrets as carefully as the volcano holds its fire, a reminder that not all stories are meant to be told at once. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the streets alive again, merchants calling out their wares, children laughing, women painting walls with lilies and dolphins, the air filled with the scent of saffron, of wine, of the salty sea. Then, imagine the earth trembling, the sky darkening, the sea rising. Imagine the moment when voices fade, and only the wind remains. That is Akrotiri, a city both alive and dead, both present and absent, both a treasure and a warning. Today, visitors to Santorini stand on the edge of its caldera, gazing out at the blue waters that fill the volcano's broken heart. Few realize that beneath those waves once lay a thriving world. Fewer still walk the ruins of Akrotiri, where silence tells a story more powerful than words. The dead city of Akrotiri is not truly dead. It breathes through its paintings, whispers through its stones, and lingers in the myths of Atlantis. It reminds us that even the greatest achievements of humanity can be undone in a single moment by the earth itself. It reminds us that life is fragile, that beauty is fleeting, and that time, though it buries, also preserves, and so Akrotiri waits. Half revealed, half hidden. A city painted in color, drowned in silence, remembered in legend. The dead city of Akrotiri, forever asleep, forever awake, forever calling us to listen. The Lady of Elche bust in the dry lands of southeastern Spain, where the sun bakes the earth and olive trees bend in the wind. There once lived a people whose stories are mostly forgotten. Their names are lost to time, their kingdoms erased, their voices scattered on the wind. But in one extraordinary moment, in the late 19th century, the earth gave back a fragment of their world, a face carved in stone, with eyes that look out across centuries, a woman of elegance, of mystery, and of silence. She is known to us today as the Lady of Elche. Imagine it. The year was 1897. In a field near the town of Elche, a farm boy turned his spade into the soil. He was not searching for history. He was tending the land, as generations had before him. And yet, his spade struck something hard. Beneath the dirt lay the face of a woman, delicate and calm, her features carved with such precision that it felt as though she had only just fallen asleep. Her headdress rose like wings around her face, her ornaments heavy, her lips slightly parted. The Lady of Elche had returned to the light of day, after 2,000 years in darkness. But who was she? The bust is carved in limestone, standing at about half a meter tall. But it is not the size that captures you, it is the presence. Her eyes are hollow yet deep, staring past us, past time itself. Around her face sits an elaborate headdress, with two great discs like wheels on either side, and layers of finely detailed ornaments cascading down her chest. Scholars see in her features the influence of many worlds, the stylized beauty of the Iberians, the craft of the Phoenicians, the solemnity of the Greeks. She is not just one culture. She is the meeting place of many, the Iberian Peninsula caught between the great powers of the ancient Mediterranean. And yet, the questions begin, as soon as you look into her eyes. Was she a goddess, worshipped in temples with incense and song? Was she a queen, remembered in stone so that her presence would never fade? Or was she a mortal woman, honored after death, her likeness carved to guard her journey into the afterlife? Some believe the bust was once part of a full statue. If so, where is the rest of her body? Was it broken, lost, buried elsewhere? Others notice a hollow space in the back of the bust, suggesting it may have been a funerary urn, holding ashes of the dead. If that is true, then perhaps the Lady of Elche is both face and tomb, a portrait and a vessel of life cut short. The Iberians, whose culture flourished in Spain long before the Romans arrived, remain mysterious to us. We know fragments, their art, their weapons, their pottery. We know they worshipped many gods, blending traditions of the peoples who sailed into their ports. We know they fought fiercely and traded widely, and that their lands were fertile with ideas as much as with crops. But their language is still not fully understood, their stories half silenced by time. And so the Lady of Elche stands as one of the clearest voices left to us. Yet she does not speak, she only gazes. Picture her, 2,000 years ago, shining in a temple, lit by oil lamps, as priests whispered prayers and words we can no longer read. Picture her, resting in the quiet of a tomb, guarding the ashes of one who lived and died in that forgotten world. Picture her as a symbol of power, perhaps worn in memory of a great queen, or a goddess who gave life and took it away. Every theory adds to her mystery, yet none explain her silence. The Lady of Elche has traveled far since her discovery. Soon after she was unearthed, she was taken to France, to the Louvre, where scholars marveled at her, and debates raged about her origin. Was she Iberian? Was she Greek? Was she Phoenician? Each claimed her as their own, but the truth is more subtle. She belongs to the crossroads, where cultures blended, where identities shifted like waves against the shore. In the mid-20th century, after decades abroad, she was returned to Spain, where she is now kept in Madrid. There, under careful lights, she gazes out at the visitors who come to meet her. Thousands of faces look into hers each year, but she remains calm, untouchable, unreadable, and still, the mystery lingers. Who carved her? Who looked upon her when she was first created? Was she meant to be a companion for the dead, or a figure of worship for the living? Was she modeled on a real woman, perhaps a priestess of high rank, or a figure drawn only from imagination? For some, she represents a goddess of fertility, her rounded ornaments symbolizing the cycles of life, the endless rhythm of birth and death. For others, she is a funerary portrait, a way of honoring the deceased, holding their spirit within stone. Some even whisper that she is neither goddess nor queen, but both, for in ancient worlds, divinity and royalty often walked hand in hand, and so, she remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of archaeology. A face that endures without a voice, a presence that commands attention, yet refuses explanation. But perhaps that is the very point. Perhaps the Lady of Elche was not meant to tell us who she is, but to remind us of the silence of time itself. In her stillness, we hear echoes of the Iberian world, a culture now gone, but once full of life, trade, ritual, and art. In her gaze, we feel the weight of history pressing forward, across centuries, into our present. Close your eyes and imagine meeting her in the half-light of a temple, the air heavy with incense, the murmur of prayers around you, the flicker of fire across carved stone. She stares back at you with eyes that pierce the dark. She knows something you do not. She holds a truth that has slipped away, carried by the silence of the centuries. And you, like every visitor since 1897, are left to wonder. The Lady of Elche is not just an artifact. She is a question carved in stone. She is history staring back at us. And she will continue to wait, calm and silent, until we learn how to listen. The jade burial suit of the Han Dynasty in the heart of ancient China. During the mighty Han Dynasty, there was a belief so powerful, so deeply rooted, that it shaped the way the living prepared for death. The Han believed that jade, that smooth green stone born of mountains and rivers, was not just beautiful. It was eternal. It was pure. It was the bridge between life and immortality. And so, when their emperors and nobles passed into death, they were clothed not in silk or gold, but in garments of stone, a suit of jade. Imagine it. Thousands of tiny plaques, carved from the hardest stone known to their world, cut into perfect shapes, polished until they glowed, then sewn together, piece by piece, into the form of a human body, a shroud of armor, a cocoon of eternity, made not of cloth, but of jade. The head, the torso, the arms, the legs, every part encased in plates, as if the body within were preparing for a second life beyond the grave. These are the jade burial suits of the Han Dynasty, among the most haunting artifacts ever uncovered. The Han believed jade could protect the body from decay, that it could preserve the spirit and secure immortality. And so, emperors commanded their artisans to begin work, long before their deaths, chiseling and grinding the stone into thousands of plaques. Each plaque had to be drilled at the edges, each drilled hole made for thread, so that the suit could be sewn together. But these were no ordinary threads. Some suits were bound with gold wire, others with silver, others with silk. The choice of thread was not random. It was a reflection of rank. Gold for emperors, silver for princes, bronze or silk for nobles of lesser standing. Even in death, hierarchy remained absolute. Think of the time, the labor, the devotion. One suit could require more than 2,000 jade plaques. Every plaque had to fit just so, forming the shape of the departed. This was not simply a garment. It was an act of devotion, of reverence, of desperate hope that jade could keep death at bay. But what is most haunting is this. When archaeologists first opened the tombs and found these suits, They did not find gleaming stone warriors standing upright. They found bodies long gone, dust within the jade shell. The jade survived, the flesh did not. And so the suits remain like empty husks, green shadows of people who once lived, who once ruled, who once believed so deeply in eternity. The first jade burial suit ever discovered was in 1968, in the tomb of Prince Liu Shang and his wife Do Wan. When the archaeologists brushed away the dust, their lamps caught the shimmer of green. And there it was, a man fully encased, every inch of him covered in jade plaques bound with gold wire. Beside him, his wife lay in her own jade suit, stitched with silver. After nearly 2,000 years their bodies had vanished, but their suits remained almost perfect, shining as though the artisans had just finished them yesterday. The discovery shocked the world. Until that moment, such suits were thought to be only legend, mentioned in ancient texts, dismissed by some as impossible. How could anyone create a suit of stone? How could brittle jade be carved so thin, so precise, and then assembled with such artistry? But there they were, undeniable, resting in silence beneath the earth. Proof of both human devotion and human ingenuity. The symbolism of jade runs deep in Chinese culture. To the ancients, jade was not just a mineral, it was virtue itself. It was purity, courage, wisdom, and compassion. It was heaven solidified in stone. To be wrapped in jade was to be embraced by eternity, to be carried safely into the realm of the ancestors, the Han dynasty, in their pursuit of immortality, even experimented with elixirs, potions, and alchemical dreams. But it was jade, cool and silent, that they trusted most. And yet, jade did not give them what they hoped. Their bodies still turned to dust. Their souls perhaps went on to the afterlife, but the jade suits remained, empty, hollow, waiting for us to find them. And when we do, we feel both awe and sadness. Awe at the craftsmanship, the belief, the dedication. Sadness at the futility of their struggle. For all their power, all their wealth, the emperors could not escape time. The jade preserved their image, but not their flesh. Still, the suits endure as some of the most extraordinary artifacts in the world. Each one is unique. Some glow a deep green, others a lighter shade, veined with white. Some are nearly intact, others fragmented. But all tell the same story, of human hands working endlessly to cheat death, to turn stone into a second skin, to wrap their rulers in eternity. Close your eyes and picture it. A dark tomb sealed for centuries. Torches flicker as archaeologists step inside. At first, nothing but dust and silence. Then, a glimmer, a shimmer, a flash of green. A figure lies before them, motionless, encased in stone like a chrysalis. It is not frightening, but serene, like a statue resting in the earth. You feel the presence of someone who believed they would never truly die, someone who trusted that jade would hold them forever. The jade burial suit is not just an artifact. It is a message from the Han dynasty. It says, we feared death just as you do. We dreamed of eternity just as you do. We used the finest tools, the hardest stones, the purest symbols to hold on to life. And though we failed, we left behind something beautiful, something eternal, something that would speak for us when our voices were gone. And that is why, even today, the jade suits stir something deep in us. They remind us that no matter how great a civilization, no matter how mighty an empire, the same truth waits at the end of all journeys. But they also remind us of the human desire to transcend, to find ways to endure, to turn even death into a work of art. The Han emperors may not have achieved immortality, but in another sense they did. For as long as their jade suits endure, we will remember them, we will wonder about them, and in that wondering, in that silence, they live on. The tomb of the Red Queen, deep within the humid jungles of Chiapas, Mexico. lies a city carved in stone. A city that whispers of gods, kings, and forgotten dreams. This city is Palenque, one of the most mysterious jewels of the Maya civilization. For centuries, its temples stood silent, covered by vines, hidden from the outside world. But in 1994, inside one of those temples, archaeologists made a discovery so haunting, so breathtaking, that it still lingers in the imagination today. They found her, a woman cloaked in crimson, resting in silence for more than 1,000 years. She is known only as the Red Queen. The discovery began in a structure called the Temple of the Inscription's Neighbor, Temple 13. For decades, this pyramid was overlooked. The focus had always been on the tomb of the great ruler Pakel, whose massive stone sarcophagus had already revealed wonders. But when archaeologists descended deeper into Temple 13, cutting through stone passageways and dusty chambers, they uncovered another burial, untouched, undisturbed, and waiting. As the final stones were removed, the air inside the tomb, sealed for over 1,300 years, rushed out like the breath of another world. And there, resting in a great stone sarcophagus, was the skeleton of a woman. But what startled the team most was the color. The entire chamber, the bones, the sarcophagus, even the walls and floor, was coated in a thick layer of bright red cinnabar dust. The red pigment clung to everything, staining the scene like frozen fire. That is why she became known as the Red Queen. But who was she? Why was she buried with such splendor? And why in red? The tomb revealed treasures alongside her remains: jade beads, pearl ornaments, seashells, bone needles, and delicate pieces of jewelry that once adorned her body. Her teeth had jade inlays, a sign of high nobility. 2 young individuals thought to be attendants or sacrifices were also buried near her, a somber reminder of Maya rituals of death. The richness of the burial suggested she was no ordinary woman. She was someone of immense importance. For years, archaeologists debated her identity. Some believed she was Pakel's wife, Lady Tsukbu Uja, the queen consort of Palenque. Others argued she might have been his mother, Lady Zakek, who played a key role in securing Pakel's throne. Whoever she was, her presence in Temple 13 meant she belonged to the royal bloodline, perhaps even a matriarch who shaped the destiny of Palenque. The cinnabar, that deep, dangerous red mineral made of mercury sulfide, was more than decoration. To the Maya, red was the color of blood, of life, of death, of rebirth. Covering the queen in red was a ritual act, a way of surrounding her with the essence of eternal life. Yet cinnabar is also toxic. Those who prepared her body, those who laid the powder across her bones, may have poisoned themselves in the process. It was as if the very pigment was both a blessing and a curse, sealing her body in beauty while carrying death for the living. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine stepping into that tomb. The flicker of your torchlight dances across crimson walls. The skeleton before you glows red, as though still alive, still breathing. Jewels catch the light, jade glimmers green against the fiery dust. And you realize you are not simply looking at bones, you are looking at a mystery, a story frozen in red. The Red Queen's tomb is often compared to that of Pakel the Great, discovered just decades earlier. Pakel's sarcophagus is monumental, with his lid famously carved to show him descending into the underworld, or perhaps ascending to the heavens. But while Pakel's tomb tells the story of a king, the Red Queen speaks of silence. She left no inscriptions, no hieroglyphs, no clear identity, only her presence, her jewels, and her blood-red cocoon. In a way, her mystery is more powerful than Pakel's certainty. We know Pakel's name, his lineage, his deeds, but the Red Queen remains beyond reach, like a whisper half heard in the jungle night. Her silence invites imagination, her enigma stirs curiosity. Was she the queen who guided Polank through its golden age? Was she the woman who ensured Pakal's reign? Or was she someone else entirely? A forgotten ruler, erased from memory? Modern science has tried to answer the question. Studies of her DNA suggest she was not Pakal's mother, but may have been his wife. Yet nothing is certain. The jungle keeps her secret. The walls of the temple refuse to speak, and so she lies there, as she has for centuries, a puzzle wrapped in red. There is something almost poetic about her resting place. Polank itself is unlike other Maya cities. Its architecture is refined, its art delicate, its inscriptions rich with history. It feels less like a fortress and more like a palace of thought, a place of poetry and philosophy. To find the Red Queen there is to feel the balance of strength and grace, of kings and queens, of life and death. The Red Queen's tomb is not only about who she was, it is about what she represents. She embodies the Maya view of death as transformation. She embodies the mysteries still locked beneath the soil, the secrets of a civilization both brilliant and fragile. And above all, she embodies the truth that sometimes history remembers names, and sometimes it remembers only colors, only symbols. When you think of Palanki, you think of temples rising above the jungle canopy, mist curling around stone steps, parrots calling in the distance, but deep below, in the heart of stone, the Red Queen still lies, cloaked in cinnabar. A reminder that even in silence, even in mystery, the past still breathes. And so the Red Queen waits, not for answers perhaps, not for her name to be restored, but for us to stand in awe, to wonder, and to realize that some stories are not meant to be solved, only felt. The Copper Serpent of Timna. In the blazing desert of southern Israel, in a place where the sun burns the earth into shades of gold and red, lies a valley unlike any other. It is called Timna, a land of jagged cliffs, towering sandstone pillars, and shadows that stretch long across the sand at dusk. For thousands of years this valley has been a place of mystery, a place where humans came not just to survive, but to worship, to dig, to smelt, and to leave behind fragments of stories that still echo today. It is here, in the heart of Timna, that archaeologists uncovered one of the most enigmatic relics of the ancient world, the Copper Serpent. The Valley of Timna has long been known for its copper mines, some of the oldest in the world. They were already being worked over 3,000 years ago, at the time when ancient Egypt extended its hand into Canaan. The desert air still carries the scent of burnt charcoal, and the stones are blackened with the memory of countless smelting fires. To imagine Timna in its prime is to see workers hammering, hauling, smelting, the glow of furnaces lighting up the night, smoke spiraling into the stars, and yet, amid the sweat and labor, amid the clamor of tools and fire, there was something more. There was belief, there was ritual, there was worship. For in this place, people did not see copper as just a metal. They saw it as a gift from the gods, pulled from the bones of the earth, a sacred treasure that needed offerings, prayers, and symbols. The most striking of those symbols was discovered in a temple at the base of Timna's sandstone cliffs, a temple dedicated to a serpent. Archaeologists brushing sand away stone by stone found altars, carvings, and then, almost unbelievably, a small copper serpent, coiled and shining, crafted by human hands more than 3,000 years ago. The serpent is simple yet powerful. Twisted into a spiral, its body gleams with the reddish hue of copper, a metal that would have glowed fiercely in the desert sun. But this was not just decoration. To those who placed it in the temple, it was a sacred object, a symbol of divinity, of healing, of death and rebirth. The serpent as a figure is as old as human belief itself. Across cultures, across continents, it appears again and again. In Egypt, it was the cobra, symbol of protection and royalty. In Mesopotamia, it was linked to gods of wisdom and fertility. In the Hebrew Bible, we hear of Moses lifting a bronze serpent on a pole so that the afflicted could be healed, simply by looking upon it. And here, in Timnah, in the burning silence of the desert, we find yet another echo of that ancient image, a copper serpent waiting for the faithful. Imagine the scene for a moment, the valley at dusk, the sandstone cliffs glowing red as the sun dips low, the air still heavy with the smell of smelting. A group of worshippers gather before a small altar. On it rests the copper serpent, gleaming with the last rays of light. Prayers are whispered, offerings of food, of incense, perhaps of animal sacrifice, are laid before the figure, and in the shadows the serpent becomes more than copper, it becomes alive, it becomes the mediator between human and divine. But what was this serpent meant to represent? Was it a local deity of the desert tribes who worked these mines? Was it an imported symbol, brought here by Egyptian overseers or Canaanite craftsmen? Or was it something older still, a memory of beliefs carried through centuries of migration and survival? The temple at Timnah has revealed clues, but not answers. We know that Egyptians once controlled these mines, we know that Midianites, the desert tribes, later took over and left offerings of their own, and we know that serpents appear in their mythology too. Some scholars believe the copper serpent was linked to the Midianite god, perhaps even the same serpent later remembered in the biblical tale of Moses and the bronze serpent in the wilderness. Could the Timnah serpent be a physical echo of that very story? The mystery deepens when we consider its material. Copper itself was sacred. It was pulled from the mountains with immense effort, smelted with knowledge that was almost alchemical. To turn stone into metal was to perform magic, and to then shape that metal into the form of a serpent. A creature feared, revered, and mysterious was to create something that straddled the line between earth and spirit. The serpent's presence in Timnah also reminds us of the desert itself, harsh, unforgiving, and yet strangely eternal. For the desert is a place of survival, of confrontation with the self, of visions. Those who lived here would have seen snakes often, slithering across the sand, striking suddenly, carrying venom and death, yet also shedding their skins, appearing reborn. It is no wonder they chose the serpent as their sacred sign. It embodied both danger and renewal, death and life. Today, the copper serpent of Timnah rests not in the desert, but in a museum carefully preserved. Yet the temple where it was found still stands in the valley, its stones silent under the burning sun. Visitors who walk there can almost feel the presence of those who came before. Miners, priests, wanderers, all drawn to this place where copper, serpent, and desert met in a strange and sacred harmony. The Red Queen of Palenque, whose bones were covered in cinnabar, reminded us of life and death in crimson. The copper serpent of Timnah, twisted and shining, reminds us of survival in bronze. Two colors, two symbols, two echoes of humanity's endless attempt to make sense of the world. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture that small serpent glowing in the firelight, held in the hand of a priest in the desert night. Picture the stars wheeling above the sandstone cliffs as chants rise into the air. Picture the miners, exhausted and broken, offering a prayer to the serpent before returning to their work, and realize, for them it was never just a piece of copper. It was protection, it was healing, it was hope. The copper serpent of Timnah is more than an artifact. It is a symbol of how deeply belief runs through human history. We may not know exactly what it meant to those who made it, but we feel it still, we feel the weight of mystery, we feel the rhythm of ancient lives, and we feel the quiet truth that even in the harshest places, humans always carried their gods with them, even if those gods took the form of a serpent made of copper. The forgotten temples of Gunung deep in the lush valleys of Bali, where the sound of flowing water mixes with the songs of birds, and the air carries the heavy perfume of tropical flowers. There lies a place of stone and silence, a place where human hands carved the very face of a mountain into a sacred memory. This place is Gunung, the forgotten temples, cut into the cliffs, standing as eternal guardians of Bali's ancient past. The journey to Gunung Kawi begins with a descent. Stone steps lead down through rice terraces, each field glowing green under the sun, the stalks swaying gently in the breeze. The path narrows, winding through the forest, until the sound of water becomes stronger. At the bottom a river flows, the Pakurasan, sacred to the Balinese, believed to hold spiritual power, and there, carved into the cliffs on either side, rise the monuments of Gunung Kawi. 10 giant shrines stand in silence, each one cut directly into the stone walls of the valley. They are called Kandi, memorials to kings and queens of a dynasty long gone. Each shrine towers more than 7 meters high, its surface etched with careful detail, as if the cliff itself had been turned into a temple by invisible hands. Time has worn their edges, moss clings to the stone, and vines snake across the carvings. Yet they remain solemn, eternal, as if waiting for someone to remember their story. Who built Gunung Kawi? The stones whisper of Bali's ancient kings, of the Warmadua dynasty in the 11th century. Tradition says the shrines were dedicated to King Anak Wangsu and his royal family. One side of the river, it is said, holds monuments for the king's consorts, the other for the king himself and his sons. But whether these tales are truth or legend, the stone does not tell us. It only holds the silence of centuries. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of chisels striking rock. Imagine hundreds of workers slowly carving these vast monuments into the cliff, stroke by stroke, as priests chanted prayers nearby, as incense curled into the air, as the jungle pressed close on all sides. The work would have taken years, perhaps decades, and when it was finished, the cliffs themselves had become a temple, a place where stone, water, and sky met in harmony. The river below was not chosen by chance. In Bali, water is sacred. It is the source of life, the spirit that flows through all things. The Pakurasan River was believed to be holy, and building a temple beside it was a way of tying the royal family to the eternal flow of nature. In this way, the monuments of Gunung Kawi were not just memorials of stone. They were prayers carved into the earth, binding human life to the sacred rhythm of the land. Standing before the shrines, one cannot help but feel small. The cliffs rise high, the carvings loom above, and the air is thick with stillness. The jungle seems to hold its breath. It is as if the valley itself remembers the footsteps of those who once came here, kings, priests, worshippers, mourners. Their voices are gone, but their presence lingers, carved into every groove of the stone. What makes Gunung Kawi haunting is not only its beauty, but its mystery, unlike the towering temples of Angkor or the pyramids of Egypt. This site feels hidden, intimate, tucked away in the folds of the earth. It is not a city of stone, but a whisper of one, a place less concerned with power and more with remembrance. Some legends tell of giants carving the cliffs in a single night. Others say the shrines were made by the mighty warrior Kibo Dud, who shaped the stone with his bare hands. Myth and history blur here, as they so often do in places where the past has been half forgotten. But whether by giant or king, warrior or mason, the result is the same, a place of awe. As you walk through Gunung Kawi, the sound of the river never leaves you. Its steady flow is like a heartbeat, echoing against the stone. The air smells of damp earth and moss. Small offerings of flowers and rice, left by modern Balinese devotees, rest at the base of the shrines, a reminder that even now, 1,000 years later, the site is not abandoned. It is still alive. The carvings themselves, though weathered, still hold their form. Tall, tiered structures, imitating the wooden architecture of temples, yet carved out of solid rock. They mimic the form of buildings that no longer survive, preserving in stone what might have once stood in wood. It is like a shadow of a city, a memory pressed into the earth. Why did the kings of Bali choose this place? Perhaps because of the river's sacred power. Perhaps because the valley, enclosed by cliffs and jungle, felt like a womb of the earth, a place where the living could commune with the spirits of the dead. Or perhaps because, in carving their memorials into the rock, they believed they were ensuring eternity. Wood burns, stone erodes slowly. But a cliff can last forever. Yet even stone is not immune to time. Rain has worn grooves into the shrines. Moss and lichens slowly cover their surfaces. The jungle presses ever closer, reclaiming what was once carved away. And yet this too adds to the magic of Ganankawi. For here, the boundary between nature and temple is thin. The carvings are part of the cliff. The cliff is part of the jungle, and the jungle is alive. It is as if the entire valley is one great temple, built not just by human hands, but by earth itself. Standing there, you begin to wonder, what did the people of Bali see in these shrines? Were they monuments to ancestors, places to honor the dead? Were they meant as eternal homes for the spirits of kings, carved into the stone so that their power would never fade? Or were they meant as messages to the gods, declarations in rock that the royal line was bound to the earth, the river, and the heavens? We may never know the full truth, but we feel it. We feel it in the quiet rhythm of the water, in the towering presence of the stone, in the way the valley wraps around you like an embrace. Ganankawi is not just a site of history. It is a place of memory, of reverence, of mystery. Today, travelers come from around the world to walk those same steps down the valley, to stand before the shrines, to leave flowers at their feet. They take photographs, whisper prayers, listen to the river, and though the kings are gone, the shrines still fulfill their purpose. They remind us of the fleeting nature of life and the enduring nature of stone. So close your eyes, hear the river flowing, feel the damp air of the jungle. Imagine the flicker of oil lamps against the cliff at night, the sound of priests chanting, the sight of kings and queens being honored in silence. Imagine the valley not as it is now, but as it was, alive with devotion, alive with memory. The forgotten temples of Ganankawi may never reveal all their secrets, but they do not need to, for in their silence, they give us something deeper. They give us wonder. They give us stillness. They give us the reminder that long before us, others stood here too, asking the same questions, seeking the same peace, carving their prayers into stone. And in the rhythm of the river, we realize their voices are still here, soft, eternal, flowing with the water, the golden rhinos of Mapungubwe. In the far northern reaches of South Africa, where the Limpopo River winds through dry plains and baobab trees stretch their limbs against the sky, there is a hill that once held a kingdom forgotten for centuries, buried beneath earth in silence. It was here, on Mapungubwe Hill, that archaeologists uncovered a treasure that would change our understanding of Africa's past. Among beads, pottery, and fragments of gold, one artifact stood out above the rest. A small, delicate figure shaped like a rhinoceros, the golden rhino of Mapungubwe. At first glance, it is a simple object, barely 20 centimeters long, fragile, light. Its body is made of carved wood, covered carefully with sheets of hammered gold, stitched together with tiny nails. Yet in its simplicity lies its power, for this golden rhino, unearthed after centuries of silence, carried the weight of a kingdom's story. The year was 1932 when the first golden rhino was found. The archaeologists who dug at Mapungubwe could not have imagined what they were about to uncover. Until then, much of the world thought that Africa, south of the Sahara, had been a land without great civilizations, without art, without gold. But Mapungubwe told a different story. Here was evidence of a society, wealthy, powerful, and connected to trade routes that stretched across continents. The golden rhino was not the only treasure found. There were golden scepters, beads, ornaments, There were graves on the summit of the hill, filled with artifacts that spoke of kings and queens. But it was the rhino that captured the imagination. Why a rhino? Why was this animal chosen to be immortalized in gold? In African tradition, the rhino is a symbol of strength, of resilience, of untamed spirit. It moves with power, yet it lives quietly, grazing, roaming, avoiding conflict until threatened. For the people of Mapungubwe, the rhino may have represented the qualities of a king, strong, enduring, but watchful and wise. Covering it in gold made it more than a symbol. It became a sacred emblem, a guardian of the throne. Close your eyes and imagine Mapungubwe as it once was. On the top of the hill, the ruling elite lived, looking down on the valley below, where farmers and craftsmen worked. The sun set over the plains and the glow of firelight flickered on the stone walls. Gold, traded from the rivers and mines nearby, gleamed in ornaments, in jewelry, in sacred figures like the rhino. Ivory, glass beads from India, porcelain from China, all passed through this kingdom, carried along vast trade routes that connected Africa to the wider world. The golden rhino was part of this story. It was not an isolated object, but a fragment of a golden age, a time when Mapungubwe was the heart of a thriving society. Centuries before the rise of Great Zimbabwe, centuries before Europeans set foot on these lands, and yet despite its splendor, Mapungubwe did not last. Around the 13th century, the kingdom declined. Climate may have shifted, trade routes may have changed, political struggles may have weakened the state. Slowly the hill fell silent. The people moved on, the graves closed, the treasures forgotten. For 700 years, the golden rhino slept beneath the soil. When it was rediscovered, the world was not ready to accept its story. During apartheid in South Africa, the golden rhino was hidden away, locked in university vaults, shielded from the public. To acknowledge it was to acknowledge that advanced African civilizations had flourished long before colonial times, a truth that the government of that era wished to suppress. For decades the rhino waited in silence again, unseen, unspoken, denied. But history cannot be silenced forever. Today, the golden rhino is displayed with pride in the Mapungubwe Museum. It has become a national symbol of South Africa, appearing on currency, in art, in schools. Children learn of the kingdom of Mapungubwe and how their ancestors built societies rich in trade, culture, and power. The rhino is no longer hidden. It shines in the light once more. Standing before it, you might be surprised by its size. So small, so fragile, and yet, as you look closer, you realize that its power does not lie in its scale. It lies in what it represents. This little golden animal carries the memory of a forgotten kingdom. It tells us that greatness is not only found in massive monuments or towering statues. Sometimes, it is found in the careful beating of gold onto wood, in the hands of an artisan shaping an animal into eternity. Imagine the artisan at work, sitting in the dim light of a hut, hammering thin sheets of gold, pressing them gently against the carved wooden form of the rhino. Each tap of the tool a heartbeat, each line a prayer. Perhaps this was not just an object, perhaps it was a ritual, perhaps the rhino was made to accompany a king in death, to serve as his guardian in the afterlife. Or perhaps it was a symbol of rule, held aloft during ceremonies, gleaming in the sunlight, a reminder of strength and power. We may never know for certain. The voices of Mapungubwe are long gone, their stories carried away on the winds of time. But the golden rhino remains. And when you see it, when you let your eyes linger on its simple, delicate shape, you feel that presence. You feel the echo of a kingdom that refused to be forgotten. The golden rhino teaches us something important. It teaches us that history is not always written in books. Sometimes, it is written in the earth, waiting to be uncovered. Sometimes, It is written in gold, small enough to fit in your hand, but powerful enough to change how we see the world. So the next time you think of Africa's past, do not think only of silence or of emptiness. Think of Mapungubwe. Think of a hill crowned with shrines and treasures. Think of a kingdom that thrived on trade and art. And think of the golden rhino, standing quietly, its head bowed, its body gleaming, a reminder that the spirit of Africa is strong, enduring and eternal. In the stillness of that artifact, in the shimmer of its gold, you can almost hear the whispers of a forgotten king. His kingdom may have vanished, his people may have moved on, but his memory, his symbol, still shines. And like the rhino itself, it endures. The tomb of the griffin warrior. In the olive groves of southwestern Greece, not far from the ancient palace of Pylos, there lies a tomb that has rewritten what we thought we knew about early Greece. Buried for more than 3,500 years, undisturbed, untouched, forgotten by time, it waited patiently beneath the soil. And then, in 2015, archaeologists stumbled upon it. A grave so rich, so powerful in its silence, that the world now knows it as the tomb of the griffin warrior. The name comes from a small sealstone found inside, carved with the image of a mythic griffin, a creature half eagle, half lion. The griffin, a guardian between worlds, a symbol of strength and divine power. And so, the man within the tomb, though his real name is lost, is remembered today as the griffin warrior. When the excavation began, no one expected what lay beneath the stones. The archaeologists thought they might find the remains of a simple warrior, but as they brushed away the broken pots, the tomb began to reveal a story unlike any other. Inside, the skeleton of a man, laid carefully with weapons by his side, a bronze sword, a dagger, armor fit for battle, and not just tools of war but treasures of beauty, gold rings, carved beads, fine combs, inlaid weapons glittering with ivory and precious stones. There were more than 1,500 artifacts packed into this single grave, a treasure hoard for the afterlife, untouched for millennia. The griffin warrior was not a pharaoh in Egypt, not a great king of Mesopotamia, not a ruler known from books or inscriptions. And yet, his burial rivaled theirs in wealth. This one man, buried around 1450 BCE, seemed to hold within his tomb a bridge between two worlds, the world of the Mycenaeans and the older world of the Minoans from Crete. For in his grave were objects that spoke of both cultures. The Mycenaean bronze weapons, heavy, strong, built for war, and the Minoan works of art. Delicate sealstones carved with scenes so intricate, they could only be made by masters of craft. One of them, known as the Pylos combat agite, was so finely carved that even under modern microscopes the detail is astonishing. Warriors clash, muscles strain, swords meet shields in a moment frozen forever. It is a masterpiece, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. Who was this man, this griffin warrior, who commanded such treasures? Was he a warlord, a king, a priest? Some suggest he was a chieftain who rose to power during a turbulent age, when Mycenaean Greece was just beginning to dominate the Aegean. Others believe he was chosen as a bridge, a figure who carried the traditions of Crete into the new Greek world. Whatever the answer, his burial shows that he was not just respected, he was revered. Close your eyes and imagine his funeral. The body of the warrior laid upon the ground, his bronze sword placed by his hand. Gold rings slipped onto his fingers. Necklaces of beads draped over his chest. Perfume jars, combs, carved ivory, every detail of life and death prepared for him. And then, stone by stone, the tomb sealed, the earth above covering it, the olive groves growing silent over time. For 3,500 years, no one touched it, no grave robbers disturbed it, no farmer's plow reached it, only silence, only time. And then, when it was found, the tomb seemed to breathe again. The artifacts gleamed as though they had just been placed there. The seal stones still shone, the gold still glimmered. It was as if the griffin warrior himself had been waiting to be remembered. But the story does not end with the treasures, for his bones, too, speak. Studies of his skeleton show that he was in his 30s when he died. Strong, tall for his time, a man accustomed to the weight of weapons. His teeth showed signs of wealth, his bones signs of good health. Unlike many of his contemporaries, this was no ordinary man. This was someone who lived at the center of power. And yet, the tomb raises more questions than it answers. Why was he buried here, near the palace of Nestor in Pylos, a site that would later become legendary in Homer's tales? Why was his grave left untouched, when so many others were looted long ago? Was he protected by myth, by fear, by reverence, or simply forgotten by chance? The Griffin warrior's tomb is a reminder that history is never fixed. Just when we think we understand the past, a single discovery can open new doors. Before 2015, scholars thought that Mycenaeans simply borrowed from the Minoans, imitating their art, their traditions. But the Griffin warrior's tomb shows something deeper. A merging of worlds, a blending of cultures, a man who stood at the heart of transformation. And so the griffin, the creature carved on the seal stone, seems almost prophetic. Half lion, half eagle, a being of two natures. The Griffin warrior was just that. A man of two worlds, standing between Minoan and Mycenaean, carrying the strength of both into the future. Today, the treasures of his tomb are studied carefully in museums and universities. The Pylos combat agate has been called one of the greatest works of prehistoric art ever discovered. The gold rings shine under glass, their delicate engravings showing scenes of gods and rituals long forgotten. And the man himself, his bones carefully preserved, still lies at the center of mystery. In the stillness of the museum, when you look at the artifacts, you may feel what those first archaeologists felt. The weight of time collapsing, the presence of a man who lived and died 3,500 years ago. His tomb was not just a grave, it was a message, waiting for us to listen. The Griffin warrior will never speak again, but through his treasures, through his gold and his stones, through the myth of the griffin that guards him, he whispers to us still, a warrior, a leader, a bridge between worlds. A man whose story was buried in silence, but whose memory has risen again. And as the olive trees sway gently in the winds of Pylos, their roots tangled in ancient soil, the earth remembers. The Griffin warrior endures. The oracle bones of the Shang dynasty. In the heart of ancient China, more than 3,000 years ago, there lived a people who believed that the world was never silent, that the voices of the past, of the ancestors, of the spirits of heaven and earth were always speaking. To hear them, to understand their whispers, one had to know where to look. And so, in the age of the Shang dynasty, kings and priests turned to something simple, something fragile, yet eternal. They turned to bones. These were not ordinary bones. They were the oracle bones, the oldest written records of China, the first whispers of a civilization that would one day grow into one of the greatest in the world. Imagine it. The year is somewhere between 1200 and 1045 BCE. The Shang kings rule from their great capital at Anyang. Bronze vessels gleam in their temples, warriors march in their armies, and shamans call upon the spirits of the heavens. And in the royal court before the king himself, a diviner kneels. In his hands he holds a fragment of bone, perhaps the shoulder blade of an ox, perhaps the shell of a turtle. Upon its surface are thin cracks, running like veins. But these cracks are not random. They are messages waiting to be read. The diviner places the bone into the fire, heat spreads across it, and suddenly a loud crack echoes in the silence. The bone splits, branching lines stretch outward, and the diviner bends low to study them. To him, these are not accidents of heat. They are the very language of the spirits. They are answers to questions asked by kings. And what questions they were. The oracle bones tell us of worries, of battles, of births, of deaths. Will the harvest be good? Shall we go to war against our enemies? Will the queen give birth to a son? Will the rains come? Each crack was a response from the ancestors, a bridge between the world of men and the unseen powers that shaped their destiny. But what makes these bones so haunting, so powerful, is not only the cracks but the writing carved beside them. The earliest form of Chinese characters, sharp, deliberate strokes etched into bone, each mark an ancestor of the language still alive today. These symbols record the king's question, the diviner's reading, and sometimes even the outcome. They are history, carved into bone, preserved by fire. When the bones were buried, no one could have imagined that one day, thousands of years later, they would be unearthed by farmers plowing their fields. For centuries, the oracle bones lay forgotten beneath the soil until the late 19th century. At that time, people called them dragon bones. They were ground into powders sold in markets, believed to cure illness. Healers crushed the bones of kings, not knowing they held the first chapters of China's story. It was only when scholars noticed the strange markings on these fragments that their true importance began to emerge. These were not random scratches. These were words, a hidden library, waiting in the dust of tombs and fields. Today, more than 100,000 oracle bones have been found, and together they reveal a portrait of a people whose lives were bound to the rhythms of heaven and earth. They show us that the Shang kings were not only warriors, but priests, mediators between the human and the divine. They ruled not just with armies, but with rituals, seeking guidance before every major decision. Close your eyes and picture the court of the Shang, the king robed in animal skins and jewels of jade, seated high upon a throne, before him the diviner, holding the bone carefully, as though it were alive. A question is whispered, the fire burns, the crack resounds. The diviner leans forward, reading the fissures like veins of destiny, and then he carves the answer, forever fixing it into history. The questions carved on these bones may seem simple, but they are also profoundly human. A father asks about the health of his child. A ruler asks whether his army will be victorious. A farmer asks whether the rains will bless the soil. Beneath the weight of ritual and ceremony, we see the same hopes and fears that fill human hearts today. And yet, there is something eerie about the silence of these bones. For we can read their words, but we cannot hear the voices that once spoke them. The cracks, the strokes of the knife, the fire's breath, all of it is gone. What remains are fragments, thousands of small windows into a world both familiar and strange. Some of the oracle bones still carry the smell of fire, some are stained dark with age. On them the characters are sharp, as if carved yesterday. You can trace the lines with your finger and feel the hand of a scribe who lived 3,000 years ago. It is like touching time itself, but beyond their beauty and mystery, the oracle bones carry weight. Haeckel was not merely a man. He was becoming divine, joining the cycles of the gods, rising into eternity. The carving was a map of his journey into the afterlife, a promise that death was not the end, but a passage. And yet, when the modern world saw this image, not everyone agreed on its meaning. Some looked at Haeckel's reclining figure, at the way he seems to reach forward with his hands, at the strange shapes around him, and claimed it was not mythology at all, but something else entirely. Some suggested that Haeckel was not ascending into the heavens of the Maya gods, but rather seated in some kind of machine, a rocket, an ancient spacecraft. This idea, known as the ancient astronaut theory, captured the imagination of many. Was Haeckel the Great not only a king, but a traveler among the stars? Was this carving not a myth, but a memory of contact with beings beyond our world? Most scholars firmly reject this interpretation, pointing instead to rich Maya cosmology. But still, the image lingers. Once seen, it is difficult to forget. Whether one sees mythology or machinery, the carving reminds us of the depth of Maya imagination and the mysteries still locked within their stone. Pakal's tomb itself is equally breathtaking. The chamber walls are carved with scenes of his ancestors, surrounding him in death just as they did in life. Offerings of shells, bones, and precious stones filled the chamber. For centuries, the tomb had remained untouched, sealed by the Maya themselves to protect their king for eternity. And yet, in 1952, the seal was broken, and Pakal's story once again returned to light. When we think of tombs, we often think of Egypt, of pyramids and pharaohs. But here, in the jungles of Mexico, the Maya created something just as grand, just as powerful. The temple of the inscriptions rising above the tomb is a monument not only of stone, but of time itself. Each inscription carved into its walls records the deeds of Pakal, the lineage of kings, the stories of gods. It is both history and myth woven together. Close your eyes and picture it. The year is 6083 CE. The city of Palenque mourns, the great ruler Pakal is gone. Priests chant, incense burns, drums echo through the plaza. Slowly, carefully, his body is carried into the temple, down the hidden stairway, into the chamber prepared for him. He is laid into the sarcophagus, dressed in jade, his mask covering his face. The lid is lowered, sealing him into eternity. Above, the temple rises, a beacon for all time, and there he remained. For more than 1,000 years, silent in darkness, as the jungle grew above, as empires rose and fell, as the world forgot. Until one day, the seal was broken, and the king was seen once more. Pakal the Great was more than a man. He was a symbol, a ruler whose reign shaped Palenque, a figure whose tomb still stirs imagination. His sarcophagus lid continues to spark debate. Is it myth, or is it something more? His jade mask still gleams as though alive. His story, though carved in stone, still breathes. The tomb of Pakal the Great reminds us that death was never the end for the Maya. It was a passage, a transformation, a return to the cosmic cycle. And for us, looking back across 13 centuries, it is a reminder that the past holds mysteries we may never fully understand. But when you stand before it, you feel something more than just admiration for its beauty. You feel its weight, not physical, for it is light, but symbolic. It carries within it the dreams of an age long before us, the desire to understand the sky, the longing to connect with the sun, the moon, the stars, the eternal human urge to find order in the heavens. Close your eyes and imagine yourself back in that time, the forests stretching endlessly, the rivers cutting paths through the land, the nights filled with stars brighter than we can see today. And in the center of it all, a figure crowned in gold, reading the sky like a book, guiding the people with knowledge preserved in shining metal. The golden hat of Schifferstadt is more than a hat. It is a timekeeper, a crown of the cosmos, a reminder that even in the Bronze Age, people gazed upward with wonder, seeking to understand their place in the universe. And so, this hat, fragile, golden, mysterious, still speaks. It whispers of rituals lost to time, of nights spent watching the sky, of the unbroken chain of curiosity that links us to our ancestors. For even today, as we peer through telescopes and send probes into space, we are still doing what they once did, searching the heavens, measuring the cycles, trying to bring the vastness of the cosmos into the palm of our hands. The golden hat is proof that long before our modern calendars and machines, humans found their own way of keeping time. And in doing so, they left behind not just an artifact, but a golden reminder of our eternal dance with the stars. The idol of Kamakya. High on the hills of Nilakal in Assam, where the mist curls over the ancient stones and the sound of bells mingles with the chants of pilgrims, lies one of India's most mysterious and powerful sacred sites, the Kamakya Temple. Unlike other temples, where gods and goddesses appear in human form, here the divine is worshipped in an ancient elemental way, and deep within its dark inner sanctum rests an idol. Not of a face, not of a body, but of pure symbol carved into the living stone of the earth itself. This is the idol of Kamakya, a sacred form of the mother goddess, worshipped not as a statue, but as a natural rock, shaped like the yoni, the source of creation. It is not polished, not gilded, not adorned in gold like other idols of the world. Instead, it is raw, timeless, and eternal, a cleft in stone, covered by water that flows throughout the year, symbolizing the ever-living energy of the goddess. For thousands of years, this idol has drawn seekers, priests, kings, and pilgrims. They descend into the sanctum, where the air is heavy with incense, and oil lamps flicker against the walls. There is no sunlight here, only the dim glow of flames, the sound of chants, and the constant trickle of water, as if the earth itself breathes in rhythm with the goddess. But what makes the idol of Kamakya so extraordinary is not only its form, but the layers of history and mystery that surround it. Some say the temple stands upon one of the Shakti Pithas, the sacred sites where pieces of the goddess Sati fell upon the earth after her fiery death. At Kamakya, it is said, fell her womb, and so the idol here has been revered as the seat of fertility, creation, and cosmic power. They show us the earliest form of bureaucracy, of government guided not only by power, but by ritual. They reveal that the Shang believed deeply in the power of ancestors, that the dead continued to influence the living. To rule a kingdom was to consult those who had come before. Even now scholars study the characters on the bones. Some have transformed directly into the words of modern Chinese. Others remain undeciphered, shadows of meanings lost. Each bone is a puzzle, a piece of a language still alive, but forever changing. And perhaps most mysterious of all is the thought of how many bones still lie beneath the earth, buried in tombs yet undiscovered. Entire histories, whole conversations with the gods, waiting in silence. The oracle bones are not merely relics. They are voices, voices of kings and priests, of mothers and fathers, of a people who believed that every crack in a bone could carry the weight of the world. And as you listen to them, even now across the gulf of time, they remind us that the questions of the past are not so different from our own. Will the harvest be good? Will the rains come? Will the future be kind to us? Questions carved in bone, questions whispered into fire, questions that echo still, unanswered, yet eternal. The oracle bones of the Shang dynasty are more than archaeology. They are the heartbeat of the world's oldest living civilization, captured in fragments of bone and shell. They remind us that to seek meaning in the universe is as old as humanity itself. And as long as we keep asking, perhaps the spirits still listen. The royal tombs of Urs, in the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. There once rose a city so ancient, so powerful, that its very name became a whisper of the dawn of civilization. This was Ur, a jewel of Mesopotamia, a place where kings ruled, priests prayed, and treasures glittered beneath the desert sun. But beneath the soil of Ur, hidden for thousands of years, there lay something even greater, something that would astonish the modern world when it was uncovered in the 1920s. These were the royal tombs of Ur, vast burial chambers filled with unimaginable riches, golden headdresses, silver lyres, lapis lazuli beads, jeweled daggers, and ornaments that seemed to hold the light of the ancient world. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it. The year is around 2600 BCE. The city of Uar is alive with the sounds of markets and temples, the chants of priests rising toward the ziggurat, that massive stepped pyramid that towered over the city. But just outside this bustling life, in the sacred burial grounds, something solemn is taking place. A king has died, a queen has passed, and with them, not only their treasures, but their followers, their attendants, their soldiers, even their musicians, are being led into death. For the royal tombs of Uar were not simple graves. They were entire worlds beneath the earth. Great pits carved into the soil, where rulers were laid to rest with everything they might need in the afterlife. Their treasures, their chariots, their animals, and most haunting of all, their people. Dozens of attendants, dressed in fine clothes, wearing jewelry of gold and lapis, lying silently beside their rulers. Archaeologists who first looked upon this scene described it as breathtaking, and yet terrifying. For these were not ordinary burials, they were sacrifices. Human lives ended so that kings and queens might not enter the next world alone. The greatest of these discoveries was the tomb of Queen Pwabi. This worship stretches back into the ancient past, long before the temple's current walls were built. The cult of Kamakya is believed to be rooted in prehistoric traditions, when the earliest peoples of Assam worshipped the earth and the mother as the source of life. Later, as Hindu traditions evolved, these older rituals merged with the goddess cults, creating a temple unlike any other in India. What does this mean for the idol itself? Unlike statues of gods carved in stone, bronze, or gold, the idol of Kamakya resists definition. It is not a person, not a figure, but a force. A reminder that before gods were imagined in human form, they were felt in the raw powers of nature, in earth, water, fertility, and life itself. Rituals at Kamakya are equally mysterious. Every year during the Ambubachi Mela, the temple closes for 3 days. It is believed that during this time, the goddess herself undergoes menstruation. When the temple reopens, the water flowing over the idol is distributed among pilgrims, sacred and red in hue, symbolizing fertility and renewal. Nowhere else in the world is such a ritual practiced, where divinity is tied so closely to the natural human cycles of life. Scholars, archaeologists, and mystics alike have tried to trace the true origins of the idol. Was it first worshipped in megalithic times, when earth goddesses ruled the imagination of early tribes? Was it shaped deliberately or revealed naturally in stone? And why has it endured through centuries of dynasties, invasions, and changes in faith, when so many other traditions faded into memory? Even today, when you enter the temple, there is a sense that time itself slows. The idol does not dazzle with gold or jewels, but it draws you in with something deeper, a primal, unshaped energy, something that cannot be explained in words, but only felt in silence. It is as though the stone itself whispers of beginnings, of the first breath, the first seed, the first dawn of creation. Travelers who have visited Kamakya speak of the unease and awe it inspires. Some call it mystical, others unsettling. For in that dark chamber you do not look upon a face, but into a symbol older than memory, one that speaks of life and death, fertility and destruction, all at once. The idol of Kamakya is not just an object of worship, it is a living mystery, a reminder that before humans sought gods in the heavens, they first found them in the earth, in water, in the eternal cycles of nature. To stand before it is to feel that you are standing at the threshold of creation itself. And so the idol remains, not shaped by the chisel of man, but by the will of time and tradition, covered in flowers, bathed in water, hidden in shadows, and alive in belief. The goddess is not seen, but she is present. Not carved, but eternal. And those who come to Kamakya know in their hearts that they are in the presence of something far older than history, far deeper than faith. The idol of Kamakya is not just a stone, it is a portal to the oldest human understanding of the sacred, that life itself is divine, and creation is the greatest mystery of all, the tomb of the Lord of Sippin. In the arid lands of northern Peru, where the desert sands stretch into the horizon and the mountains stand as ancient guardians, there lies a discovery so extraordinary that it has been called the Tutankhamun of the Americas, a tomb that, for centuries, lay hidden beneath layers of earth in silence, until one night in 1987, the world was reintroduced to the splendor of the Mocha civilization. This was the resting place of the Lord of Sippin, a ruler, a warrior, a priest, a man who carried both earthly power and divine authority. His tomb was untouched, unspoiled, and filled with treasures that revealed a world long forgotten. When archaeologists first opened the burial chamber, they were stunned. Perhaps that is the true power of Pakal's tomb. It does not give us answers. It gives us questions, questions that whisper in the quiet of the jungle, that echo in the chambers of stone, that linger when we gaze upon the carving of a king who may be rising, or flying, or simply dreaming beneath the world tree. And so we leave Palenque, we leave the temple of the inscriptions. But Pakal remains, a ruler not only of his people, but of time itself. His legacy carved in stone, his spirit forever bound to the stars. The golden treasure of Priam. Beneath the windswept plains of northwestern Turkey, where the earth rolls gently toward the Aegean Sea, there once stood a city spoken of in legends, sung by poets, and remembered in whispers for thousands of years. A city of warriors and kings, of battles and beauty, of betrayal and glory. That city was Troy. For centuries many believed Troy was nothing more than a story, a myth woven by Homer in the Iliad, a tale of gods and men, of Achilles and Hector, of Helen whose beauty launched 1,000 ships. But in the 19th century, one man set out to prove that Troy was not just a legend. His name was Heinrich Schliemann, a self-taught archaeologist, a dreamer obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the epic poems. Schliemann's journey was as controversial as it was ambitious. He was no quiet academic. He was fiery, determined, and sometimes reckless. Yet it was his relentless vision that led him to a low hill called Hazarlik, in modern-day Turkey, where he believed the ruins of Troy lay buried beneath centuries of earth and stone. In the 1870s, after years of digging, Schliemann made a discovery that would shake the world. As his workers dug deeper into the layers of rubble, they uncovered a magnificent cache of objects, gleaming ornaments, weapons, vessels, and diadems of gold. It was a dazzling sight, a hoard of treasure so breathtaking that Schliemann immediately declared it to be nothing less than the treasure of King Priam, the legendary ruler of Troy himself. Imagine the scene, the summer sun burning above, dust rising from the trenches, and suddenly, buried beneath the soil, an ancient glow, gold ornaments, crowns, chains, earrings, bracelets, brooches, all shimmering in the light, after lying hidden for more than 3,000 years. Copper shields, bronze daggers, silver cups, all carefully crafted, as if left behind in a forgotten treasury. Among the most famous of these objects was the golden diadem, a crown woven from delicate threads of gold, said to have been worn by the women of ancient Troy. Schliemann, ever dramatic, placed it upon the head of his wife Sophia and photographed her wearing it, calling her the new Helen of Troy. That image spread across the world, igniting imaginations, fueling headlines, and forever entwining myth with archaeology. But was it truly Priam's treasure? That question has haunted scholars ever since. Schliemann's methods were bold, but also destructive. In his eagerness to dig, he cut through layers of settlement, sometimes destroying evidence that could have told a clearer story. What he found, the Golden Hoard, did not actually belong to the time of Priam or the Trojan War as described by Homer. Instead, most scholars now agree the treasure was much older, dating to the early Bronze Age, at least 1,000 years before the supposed fall of Troy. So perhaps it was not Priam's treasure at all. Perhaps it was a treasure of another king, another people whose names are lost to history. Yet Schliemann's bold proclamation captured the world's imagination, and even today many still call it Priam's treasure, a name too powerful to let go. Before them lay not only the skeletal remains of the Lord himself, but an entire court, preserved in death. Beside him were warriors, servants, women, even a child, all sacrificed to accompany him into the afterlife. There were llamas, buried to carry his spirit on its eternal journey, and all around him, treasures gleamed in the faint light of the excavator's lamps. Gold, silver, turquoise, shells, copper. The room shimmered like the reflection of sunlight on water. He wore a golden headdress, large ear ornaments that glowed in the darkness, necklaces strung with rare stones, and intricate ornaments shaped like warriors, animals, and gods. The richness of the tomb told a story. This was not just a man. This was a living bridge between the Moche people and their gods. The Moche civilization flourished along the Peruvian coast nearly 2,000 years ago, long before the rise of the Inca. They were masterful artisans, warriors, and engineers. Their pottery tells us stories of rituals, battles, sacrifices, and daily life. Their temples, built from adobe bricks, rise in tiers against the desert sky, and their burials, like that of the Lord of Sippin, reveal the hierarchy and sacred beliefs that guided their world. The tomb itself was carefully constructed, with layers upon layers of chambers. Each level represented not only wealth, but status, power, and cosmic meaning. For the Moche, death was not an ending. It was a continuation, a passage into another realm. And for someone of such immense importance, the journey had to be accompanied by everything he might need: food, weapons, ornaments, and the lives of those who served him. What do we learn from this? That the Lord of Sippin was more than a political figure. He was the embodiment of divine power. His attire, reconstructed by archaeologists, reveals him dressed like the Moche deity of the warrior priest, a godlike figure who ruled over life, death, and sacrifice. Every ornament, every piece of jewelry was symbolic. The peanuts buried with him, some of gold, some of silver, represented the male and female principles, life and fertility, sun and moon. The crescent-shaped ornaments symbolized the heavens, while the turquoise stones represented water, so vital in the dry deserts where the Moche lived. The discovery of the Lord of Sippin's tomb was nothing short of miraculous. For decades, grave robbers had looted countless Moche sites, erasing the past for quick profit. But somehow, this tomb remained sealed, waiting patiently for its story to be told. And when it was finally uncovered, it transformed our understanding of ancient Peru. Imagine for a moment the scene: archaeologists digging carefully under the Peruvian night, brushing away centuries of sand, the sudden glint of gold, the realization that they were standing before a burial untouched since antiquity, the silence broken only by their own breaths, as history itself unveiled its treasures. The Lord of Sippin's tomb is not only an archaeological marvel, it is a reminder of the fragility of time. For centuries, his name was forgotten, his people reduced to dust, yet within the tomb, his presence still speaks, his ornaments still shine, his power still radiates. Today, much of what was found rests in museums, preserved behind glass, studied by scholars. Yet the tomb itself remains a place of mystery. Who was he truly? A king? A warrior? A priest? Was he loved, feared, or worshipped? And what songs were sung, what chants were whispered, as his body was laid into the earth so long ago? The treasures tell us of wealth and ritual, but the silence tells us something more: that even the most powerful rulers, those who command armies and shape nations, eventually return to the earth. They dreamed of life after death, The royal tombs of UR are not simply graves. They are stories. Stories of kings and queens, of loyalty and sacrifice, of music and silence, of treasures both dazzling and tragic. They remind us that the past is never truly gone. It lies beneath the earth, waiting, whispering, until someone listens. And so, as we leave the tombs behind, as we close the doors of the chambers in our minds, we carry with us a question. A question carved not in gold or silver, but in the silence of history. What does it mean to live? And what does it mean to follow another into eternity? The royal tombs of UR hold no easy answers, but they offer us something perhaps even more powerful. They offer us the chance to wonder. The tomb of Pacal the Great. In the lush jungles of Chiapas, Mexico, hidden beneath a canopy of green, where parrots call and howler monkeys echo across the valley, stands the ruined city of Palenque. And within its heart lies one of the most extraordinary discoveries in all of Mesoamerican history, the tomb of Pacal the Great. Nich Jnubia Pacal, often simply called Pacal, was one of the greatest rulers of the Maya. He lived in the 7th century CE, a time when Palenque was at its height, a city of towering temples, intricate carvings, and sacred knowledge. Pacal ruled for nearly 70 years, an extraordinary span of time, leading his people through prosperity, building monuments that still stand today, and weaving himself into the mythology of kingship. But what makes Pacal unforgettable is not only the city he built, or the years he reigned, but what was discovered beneath the Temple of the Inscriptions in 1952. Imagine the scene. For centuries the temple had stood silent, its stairways crumbled, its chambers filled with the whispers of the jungle. But one day, Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruiz Lugilier noticed something unusual. A series of stone slabs in the temple floor, sealed as though hiding a secret. He began excavating. Years of careful work followed. Stone after stone was removed. And then, a stairway was revealed, descending deep into the earth, into the very heart of the temple. It was as though the Maya had hidden a secret passageway, waiting to be uncovered more than 1,000 years later. At the bottom of that stairway lay a massive chamber, and within it, something no one had expected. A giant sarcophagus, its lid weighing several tons, covered with intricate carvings. When it was finally opened, archaeologists gazed upon the remains of Pacal the Great himself, dressed in jade, and surrounded by offerings meant to carry him into eternity. His face was covered by a delicate jade death mask, fitted piece by piece like a mosaic. His hands held ornaments, his body adorned with jewels. Around him lay treasures and symbolic items, all carefully placed to ensure his journey to the other world. But it was not just the man that astonished the world. It was the sarcophagus lid. Carved into the massive stone is one of the most famous and mysterious images in all of archaeology. It shows Pacal lying back, his body tilted, surrounded by symbols of the cosmos. A great tree rises above him, the world tree of Maya mythology, connecting the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. At the base of the carving, jaws of the underworld gape open. Above, celestial symbols glimmer. Pacal is caught between realms at the moment of death and transformation. To the Maya, this was a sacred vision of rebirth. Their glory buried, their names lost, until chance allows them to be remembered again. The Lord of Sippin rises from the sands of Peru, as both a ruler and a mystery, a reminder that civilizations rise and fall, but the echoes of their greatness can survive in gold, in stone, and in the soil beneath our feet. When you think of his tomb, do not only imagine the glitter of treasure, imagine the dim flicker of torches in the desert night, the sound of priests chanting as the earth closed over the chamber, the silence of centuries that followed, and then the sudden shock of discovery, when modern hands reached into the past and touched the golden face of a forgotten king. The Lord of Sippin lives again, not in flesh, but in story. And as long as we tell his tale, his spirit remains eternal. The sarcophagus of the Palatine Hill, high above the heart of Rome, rising gently between the bustle of the Forum and the grandeur of the Colosseum, lies a hill that has always carried whispers of the past. The Palatine Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome, is more than just a place of ruins. It is the birthplace of Rome's legends, a sacred ground where myth and history meet, and hidden among its stones lies a mystery that has puzzled scholars for generations. A sarcophagus, old and silent, resting in the so-called lapis niger, the black stone shrine. It is said that the sarcophagus could belong to Rome's very first king, Romulus, the mythical founder who, according to legend, was raised by a she-wolf and destined to carve an empire from the wilderness. Imagine the weight of such an idea, that within this ancient block of tufa, beneath layers of earth and centuries of silence, may lie the remains of the man who became a god in the eyes of his people. But as with all things Roman, the truth is wrapped in layers of history, politics, and belief. The discovery of the sarcophagus in the early 20th century stunned archaeologists. Dug deep beneath the steps of the Roman Forum, close to the very spot where Romulus was believed to have lived, they uncovered a rectangular tomb lined with stone. Beside it, inscriptions in the oldest Latin known to us carved in letters so ancient they seemed almost alien to modern eyes. The words are broken, fragmented, yet they speak of kings, of sacred laws, and of curses that would fall upon anyone who dared to disturb the resting place. The sarcophagus itself is carved from black tufa, a volcanic stone, stark and unadorned. Unlike the ornate marble tombs of later emperors, this one is severe, humble, yet powerful. No treasures were found within, no glittering gold, no statues or masks, only the block itself, resting in silence, as though guarding a secret too great to reveal. For centuries, Romans themselves revered the spot. They called it the lapis niger, the black stone, and believed it marked the tomb of Romulus. Later tradition suggested it might have been the grave of other early kings, perhaps even Hostus Hostilius, one of the city's first rulers. Others whispered that it was not a grave at all, but a shrine, a symbolic place meant to embody the presence of their mythical founders. The mystery deepens when we consider the way the Romans treated this site. They built over it, around it, yet never destroyed it. Even the most powerful emperors, men who reshaped the very landscape of Rome, left the black stone untouched. This respect, this fear tells us something important. Whether or not Romulus himself lay within, the Romans believed they were standing on sacred ground. Imagine for a moment the life of early Rome, a cluster of huts on the Palatine Hill, smoke rising from fires, the voices of shepherds and warriors blending with the cries of animals. A city not yet the Rome we imagine today, but something raw, fragile, uncertain. The treasure itself has lived a life as dramatic as the legends. After its discovery, Schliemann smuggled much of it out of Turkey, hiding it from authorities. It passed through Germany, displayed in Berlin's museums as proof of Troy's reality. But then, during World War II, it vanished. As bombs rained on Berlin and armies closed in, the treasure disappeared. For decades, it was thought lost forever, another victim of war. But in 1993, long after the Cold War ended, a revelation came. Hidden in the vaults of the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, the treasure resurfaced. Soviet soldiers had taken it as war booty at the end of World War II, a secret kept for nearly half a century. Today it remains in Moscow, its ownership still fiercely debated between Turkey, Germany, and Russia. A treasure caught not only in myth, but in modern politics. And so the story of Priam's treasure continues. A tale that began in Homer's epic, that passed through Schliemann's fiery hands, that vanished in the smoke of war, and that reappeared in secret vaults decades later. But perhaps the most haunting part of the story is not the gold itself, but what it represents. For Schliemann, it was proof that the myths were real, that Homer's Troy was not just a story, but a city of stone and blood. For us, it is a reminder that history and legend are always intertwined, that gold has a way of shining across time, even when buried in the earth. Close your eyes and picture it. A small hill in Turkey, a man driven by dreams, scraping away the soil, and then suddenly a gleam, the gleam of gold that had not seen the sun for 3,000 years. The gleam of a treasure that may not belong to Priam, but that still whispers of Troy. The diadems, the cups, the weapons, they tell us of a people long gone, of craftsmanship unmatched, of wealth and power that once flowed through the ancient Aegean world. Whether Priam's or not, the treasure is a bridge between myth and archaeology, between story and fact, between the world of Homer and the soil beneath our feet. And so, the treasure of Priam remains more than just objects of gold. It is a symbol of humanity's endless quest to uncover its past, a symbol of our fascination with myth, with glory, with the shining fragments of lost worlds. Perhaps in the end, it does not matter if the gold truly belonged to Priam. What matters is that it was found, that it was saved from the silence of the earth, that it continues to speak, in whispers, in legends, in the quiet halls of museums where it waits. The golden treasure of Priam is not just a discovery. It is a story of obsession, of myth, of loss and rediscovery. A story that reminds us that somewhere beneath our feet, in hills and valleys, in forgotten ruins and silent mounds, treasures still wait. Treasures that shine not only with gold, but with the light of memory. The golden hat of Schifferstadt. In a quiet German town called Schifferstadt, where the fields ripple gently with the wind, and the soil has witnessed centuries of footsteps, a discovery was made that still glimmers like sunlight caught in ancient memory. Beneath the earth in 1835, 3 farmers unearthed something extraordinary. Not a sword, not a crown, not a treasure chest, but a tall conical hat of pure gold. It was delicate, yet dazzling, thin sheets of hammered gold, patterned with mysterious rings, dots and bands. And in the center of it all, the story of Romulus, who slew his own brother Remus in a moment of rage and built the walls that would grow into empire. To bury such a man in stone would not simply mark his death, but proclaim the beginning of Rome itself. The sarcophagus, though empty now, still holds the weight of that legend. To stand before it is to stand in the presence of origins. You are reminded that every empire, no matter how vast, begins with a single step, a single leader, a single story, whispered across generations. Some scholars believe that the sarcophagus never held a body at all, that it was always symbolic, a cenotaph, a monument to a man who disappeared into myth. For, according to Roman lore, Romulus did not die like other men. He was taken up into the heavens, transformed into a god, and became Quirinus, protector of Rome. If that story is true, then the sarcophagus is not a tomb, but a bridge between earth and sky, between history and legend. Yet others argue that the burial could have been real, that beneath the layers of earth, beneath even the sarcophagus we see today, there may be more chambers, offerings, remains long since crumbled to dust, and with them, answers to questions that continue to echo through the ages. What we do know is this: the Palatine Hill was always sacred, emperors built their palaces there, festivals were celebrated there, and the presence of this sarcophagus, dark and silent, was a reminder of Rome's deep roots. Close your eyes and picture it: the steps of the Forum, crowded with citizens, priests in white robes passing by, carrying offerings, and in the shadow of the Senate, in the beating heart of Rome, a stone chamber whispering of kings, gods, and the birth of empire. The sarcophagus does not dazzle with gold or jewels. Its power lies in its silence, its simplicity, and the fear it inspired even in those who ruled the world. To this day, visitors to Rome can look upon the site, preserved beneath protective glass. And though the city around it has changed, the feeling remains: you are standing on the threshold of mystery. You are standing where Rome itself was born. Perhaps the sarcophagus holds Romulus, perhaps it holds another forgotten king, or perhaps it holds nothing at all, only the weight of belief, of stories told and retold, shaping a people's identity for centuries. The sarcophagus of the Palatine Hill is more than stone. It is the echo of a beginning, a reminder that even the greatest of civilizations cling to their myths, guard their origins, and enshrine their mysteries in the heart of their cities. And so it waits, in silence, on the Palatine Hill, where history and legend will forever share the same shadow, the treasure of the Oxus. Far to the east, where mountains meet desert, and rivers carve their way through ancient lands, there lies a treasure whose very name shimmers like gold in the memory of history. It is called the treasure of the Oxus, a hoard of dazzling artifacts, buried for centuries along the banks of the great Oxus River, in the land once known as Bactria, today spread across Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. The Oxus treasure is not simply a collection of golden objects. It is a story of empire, of faith, of artistry, and of the delicate hands that shaped metal into symbols of eternity. It is a window into the documented Persian world, into the heart of a civilization that stretched from the Mediterranean to India, binding countless peoples beneath one great rule. Imagine for a moment the river itself, broad, powerful, endless, its waters carrying not just life, but memory. Along its banks, in the 4th century BC, stood temples, caravans, markets alive with voices in many tongues. Traders from India brought spices and ivory. Nomads from the steppes carried horses and wool. Her name, still legible on a cylinder seal found in her grave, tells us that she was no mere consort, but a ruler in her own right. And her tomb, it was filled with treasures that spoke of a world both rich and mysterious. A golden headdress with delicate leaves and flowers, crafted so finely that even today it seems alive. Beads of carnelian and lapis lazuli, their colors still vibrant after 4,500 years. A gaming board, instruments, cups of gold and silver. Each piece not just a treasure, but a story. Imagine the last moments of Queen Pwabi's attendants, musicians laying down their lyres, servants adjusting their jeweled headbands, guards polishing their spears one final time. Then silence. They followed their queen into eternity, their bodies placed neatly in rows, as though asleep. Even now, you can almost hear the last notes of their songs echoing in the dust of the tomb. When Sir Leonard Woolley, the archaeologist leading the excavations in the 1920s, uncovered these chambers, he was stunned. No one had ever seen burials like this, and the world, reading the reports, was equally astonished. It was as if the tombs had been sealed yesterday. So vivid were the treasures, so haunting the scenes, and yet the royal tombs of UR are more than a collection of riches. They are windows into the heart of the world's first great civilizations. They show us a people who believed that life and death were not separate, but one, that the afterlife was a continuation of this world, and that rulers should carry with them their wealth, their power, and their people into the next. There is a rhythm to these discoveries. A harp of silver and gold, silent for millennia, still carries the shape of strings that once filled the air with music. A golden cup, dulled by time, still glimmers faintly when light strikes its edge. Jewelry once worn by living women now lies frozen in earth. Objects meant to be touched, to be used, to be admired, trapped in silence, waiting for thousands of years to be found again. But there is also unease. For what we see in the tombs is not just beauty, but death. The attendants were not buried by choice. Many of their skulls bear signs of blunt force trauma. Some may have been given poison. They were sacrifices to a system of belief that demanded loyalty beyond life itself. The treasures of UR also speak of connections that stretched far beyond Mesopotamia. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from India, gold from distant lands. The tombs show us that even at this early time, the people of UR were part of a vast, interconnected world, a world of trade, of culture, of exchange. A world far larger than we might expect for 4,000 years ago. And yet, for all the splendor, for all the wealth, one cannot help but feel sorrow when standing before these artifacts today. In the halls of museums, Queen Pwabi's headdress glitters beneath artificial lights. Her jewelry is displayed behind glass. Her attendants who gave their lives to follow her lie in silence. What once was ritual, sacred, and alive is now archaeology. Still, when you look closely at the treasures of UR, you cannot help but feel the heartbeat of a civilization long gone. You can imagine the music of the lyres, the golden crowns swaying in firelight, the chants of priests calling upon the gods. And you begin to sense that the people of UR, though so distant in time, were not so different from us. They loved beauty. They sought meaning. And somewhere, in this place of mingling cultures, treasures were offered, hidden, lost, and rediscovered 2,000 years later. When the hoard was first brought to light in the late 19th century, its beauty stunned the world. Hundreds of items, cups and bracelets, plaques and amulets, coins and figurines, crafted from gold, silver, and precious stones. Each piece told its own tale, and yet together they formed a symphony of empire. There were armbands shaped like winged griffins, creatures of myth stretching their claws as if to guard the wearer from unseen dangers. There were delicate plaques, stamped with images of priests, soldiers, and kings, as though capturing the very heartbeat of Persian power. There were coins, their faces bearing the likeness of rulers who once commanded armies that shook the earth. And among them, small votive figures, men and women in prayer, their hands raised toward the heavens, frozen in devotion across the centuries. The craftsmanship was beyond imagination. Each line, each curve of gold, spoke of an artistry refined over generations. The Persians were masters not only of conquest but of culture. And here, in the Oxus treasure, we see them not only as conquerors but as dreamers, as worshippers, as humans who sought beauty and permanence in fragile metal. But with every treasure comes a mystery. Why was it hidden? Why along the banks of the Oxus? Some believe it was an offering, a gift to the gods of river and sky. Perhaps a temple once stood there, its sanctuaries filled with votive offerings of gold, left by pilgrims seeking divine favor. Others imagine a caravan, attacked by raiders, forced to bury its wealth in haste, never to return. And some whisper that it may have been the treasury of local satraps, the Persian governors, concealed in times of turmoil as Alexander the Great swept across the empire. The truth, like the river, remains elusive. What we do know is this: the treasure traveled far from its source. In the 19th century, pieces were collected, traded, sometimes smuggled, until eventually a great portion found its way to the British Museum, where they rest today under quiet lights. And yet the very act of their journey has clouded their story. Records are incomplete. Archaeologists debate what was lost, what was taken, and what may still remain buried beneath the sands. But even within this uncertainty, the treasure holds its spell. To look upon those golden armbands is to feel the weight of both empire and myth. To hold a plaque of a praying figure is to sense the timeless yearning of human beings for something greater than themselves. The Oxus treasure is not merely gold. It is memory crystallized in metal. It is devotion hammered into shape. It is fear and faith, captured in ornaments buried for millennia. Close your eyes for a moment and let the story unfold. Imagine the priests of Bactria, their robes flowing, their chants echoing by the riverbank as they place these golden figures upon altars. Imagine travelers resting by the Oxus, telling stories of distant lands, while treasures pass from hand to hand. Standing more than 30 centimeters tall, this golden hat was unlike anything ever seen before. It was no ordinary object of decoration. It was something far older, far stranger, and far more mysterious. This artifact, now known as the Golden Hat of Schifferstadt, belongs to the Bronze Age. More than 3,000 years ago, when Europe was still a land of forests, rivers, and small tribal communities, but the hat itself was not made for everyday use. It was too fragile, too precious, too unique. It carried symbols, patterns, and knowledge that scholars believe held cosmic meaning. When you look closely at the hat's surface, you see rows of repeating sun disks, rings, and dotted lines. They are not just decorations, they are calculations. Hidden within these symbols is a prehistoric calendar, capable of tracking the cycles of the sun and moon, predicting eclipses and guiding agricultural life. Imagine that for a moment. In a time before books, before compasses, before writing even reached much of Europe, a community of Bronze Age people crafted a golden object that served not only as a ritual headdress, but also as a portable observatory of the heavens. Whoever wore it carried with them the knowledge of the stars. But who wore such a hat? Most scholars believe it was the priests, the shamans, the astronomers of the Bronze Age world. They were not kings in the sense we imagine, but they held a different kind of power, the power to read the skies, to predict the rhythms of time, to declare the days of planting and harvest, of ritual and rest. To their people, they were mediators between earth and sky, between the human world and the divine. Picture it now, a summer solstice evening. The air is still. The tribe gathers around a great fire, and emerging from the shadows comes a figure clad in ceremonial robes, their face half lit by the flames, a towering golden hat shimmering in the firelight. Every movement catches the glow, reflecting the sun and the stars. To the people, this was not just a man or woman. This was a vessel of cosmic knowledge, someone who carried the sun itself upon their head. The Golden Hat of Schifferstadt is not alone. Over the years, other similar hats have been found across Europe, in Berlin, Avanten, and Esselsdorf. Each one carries its own patterns, its own coded system of time. Together they suggest a wide cultural network in Bronze Age Europe, a shared belief in the sun, in cycles, in the sacred connection between humanity and the cosmos. And yet the mystery remains. How did these people, without telescopes, without written mathematics, manage to encode such precise astronomical knowledge into gold? Were these the first scientists, their wisdom cloaked in ritual? Or was this knowledge passed to them from older civilizations now forgotten? The Schifferstadt hat was discovered buried upside down, as if deliberately placed into the ground as an offering. Perhaps it was a sacred burial, returning the power of the sun to the earth. Perhaps it was hidden away to protect it from enemies. Or perhaps, as some whisper, it was part of a ritual, in which the hat was never meant to be worn again, only given back to the gods. When the farmers first found it, they thought it was simply a strange golden pot. They had no idea they had uncovered one of the greatest treasures of Europe's deep past. Today it rests in a museum, carefully guarded, still gleaming with the same golden brilliance that once mesmerized its ancient people. Imagine the moment of hiding, the fear, the silence, the hurried burial, and the long centuries of sleep beneath the earth. Then picture the rediscovery, farmers, traders, or wanderers, stumbling upon a glint of gold in the dust, the excitement, the confusion, the whispers of a treasure too powerful to belong to one person alone, and the slow winding journey of those objects across borders, across centuries, until they became part of the story of us all. The Oxus treasure carries with it not only the brilliance of gold, but the shadow of loss. For while the artifacts survive, the full truth of their origin is gone. Like the river, history flows forward, carrying with it fragments of the past, but never the whole. And yet perhaps that is the point, that in mystery, in uncertainty, the treasure still breathes. It invites us not just to marvel at its beauty, but to wonder at its silence. The golden griffins still stretch their wings, the votive figures still pray, the bracelets still shimmer with the light of devotion, and the oxus still flows, carrying secrets that no hand may ever fully uncover. The treasure of the oxus reminds us that gold is not merely wealth, it is memory, it is devotion. It is the fragile thread that ties us to those who came before, and those who will come after, and somewhere, beneath the sands of Central Asia, perhaps more waits to be found. Another offering, another secret, another whisper of an empire that dreamed in gold.